When 13 opened his eyes, the sun was already about to set, turning the sky a purplish orange. His head still ached a bit, but it was manageable. After thanking Tiona once again for her hard work, he went to meet Rayon and the other wanderers who were already grilling several fish for their dinner. The moment 13 appeared, the leader of the wanderers asked him to join them, which he happily accepted. He was truly feeling hungry, and because of that, he ate at least 4 grilled fish, surprising the wanderers who didn't expect that the younger boy had a strong appetite. After eating, 13 asked Rayon to talk with him in private. The latter agreed, so the two of them went near the beach so that no one would be able to hear what they were going to talk about. I plan to explore the other islands, 13 said after Visego informed him that the surroundings were safe. I believe that there are other wanderers out there who have the same mission as we do. Maybe we can all work together to complete the mission. Rayon didn't reply right away. Instead, he stared at the 2 moons of Solterra in the distance. Zion, please tell me the truth, Rayon stated. Are you Zion Leventis? Yes, 13 replied. I am Zion Leventis. Rayon sighed deeply before shifting his gaze to the younger boy beside him. I had my doubts the moment you introduced yourself to us, Rayon said. You are still too young to have been spirited away, so it was not very hard to guess who you really are. Do you know? You're very popular in Pangea. People are actually looking for your whereabouts even now. I know, 13 replied. I came across a few wanderers who asked me for an autograph. Rayon chuckled after hearing the younger boy's answer. I'm glad you're here, Rayon commented. You have become a pillar of hope for all the wanderers who are about to get spirited away in Solterra for the first time. For some reason, knowing that you have the same mission, I feel like we will be able to pull through this mission just fine. Don't set up a flag. 13 shook his head. You sound like someone who will soon die a heroic death. I'm guessing that you'll even have flashbacks mid-battle, just before you die. Flag. Rayon tilted his head in confusion. What flag? The 10-year-old's face palmed, because he forgot that people in Pangea didn't understand the reference. Never mind. 13 sighed. Just don't say things as if you were about to kick the bucket. If you do, there's a high chance that it will come true, you know? Rayon nodded in understanding. Understood. Will you return here after visiting the other islands? Yes, 13 answered. I'll be back in a few weeks. 13 wanted to say that he would return after 7 weeks, but there was a chance that his conversation with him might be leaked to others. After 7 weeks, the lunar eclipse would begin, which would also be the start of the moon ceremony. However, the information he had wasn't complete. Just like he expected, he also needed to visit the 4th island where the beholder was located. Until he understood everything, he didn't dare to make guesses based on assumption. For something like this, he needed hard facts, and for that to happen, he would have to take another risk and send Tiona on another scouting mission. When he finished talking with Rayon, 13 bid his goodbye and whistled. A moment later, Blackie arrived, making Rayon almost jump back in fright. Relax, he is my friend, 13 said before mounting the nightmare Blackhound's back. I'll see you soon. Stay safe, Rayon. I will, Rayon replied. I'll wait for your return. 13 nodded and urged Blackie to leave the 1st island under the cover of darkness. Although his visit was short, he managed to gain everything he needed about the pyramid. Rayon watched as 13 and Blackie disappeared in the distance. When he was certain that he could no longer see them, he turned around to look at the young lady, who was standing right behind him. Did you hear everything? Rayon asked the young lady, who was also his sister, Rio. I did, Rio replied. I never thought that we would actually meet him here. Rowan walked towards his sister and patted her head. So why are you here? Rowan asked. Did that scumbag send you? No. Rio shook her head. The unicorn said that we could go wherever we wanted for the next 2 days. He sealed himself inside the pyramid. It seems that he felt a presence there earlier and is currently trying to capture whoever it was. The corner of Rowan's lips curled up into a smirk. I think he has just become paranoid, Rowan commented. Or someone or something really did enter the depths of the pyramid without his permission, Rio stated. That was the first time I saw him look so angry, and it scared the girls around him. Perhaps, knowing that his mood was affecting everyone, he told us to do whatever we wanted and not come inside the pyramid for 2 days. Because of that, I decided to visit you here. Perhaps, knowing that his mood was affecting everyone, he told us to do whatever we wanted and not come inside. The roan nodded in understanding. How is your investigation? Have you found his weakness? No. Rio shook her head. It is impossible to kill the unicorn with just us. Perhaps he can help us. Roan didn't need to know who her sister was referring to because he was also thinking the exact same thing. Let's wait for him to return. Roan glanced at the second island in the distance. Christopher Rotambus said in his interview that Zion always keeps his promise. So, I'm sure that he will be back, just as he said. He didn't promise anything, brother, Rio said. He just said that he will be back in a few weeks. It's the same thing, Rayon insisted. Since he said it, he will do it. You're being childish again. I'm younger than you, so it's perfectly fine for me to be childish, no? Rio shook her head helplessly before she, too, looked at the second island. We can't let him handle everything. Rio crossed her arms over her chest. We need to work hard, too. For now, make sure that you gather enough weapons, avatars, and skills. I have a feeling that we will need a miracle to get through this mission. Rayon didn't deny or affirm his sister's words. Just like her, he believed that they needed to contribute something to the mission. So if they were to pass it, they would be rewarded handsomely for the effort they put into their first mission in Solterra. Visego, who had stayed behind according to 13's orders, watched the twin brother and sister and listened intently to their discussion. When the two finally left to return to Rayon's camp, Visego spread his wings and flew away. He had made hooting noises earlier to inform his master that a young lady was hiding and listening to their conversation. But Tiona hissed and told him that it was fine. Since 13 couldn't make any weird sounds because Rayon might become suspicious, he asked Tiona to relay his message to the Poco. Visego was impressed by the discussion between the brother and sister because Rio was actively looking for the unicorn's weakness, which might help them deal it a serious blow. They had already deemed the unicorn an enemy that they needed to defeat in order to complete their mission. So, although 13 didn't ask them to do anything, they decided to take the initiative to lay down the groundwork for his return. Uncle Boo, have you caught any fish? A teenage boy with short blonde hair asked. Kids these days have no patience, a man, who seemed to be in his late 40s, muttered. Listen here, kiddo. Fishing is not just about catching fish. It's a spiritual act that allows you to temper your willpower as well as your mental strength. Uncle, it's okay. We will share the fish we caught with you, the teenage boy said with a wry smile on his face. I mean, all of us have already caught more than 30 fish. It's all right even if you couldn't catch any, you know? The middle-aged man, whom the boy called Uncle Boo, lightly cleared his throat before shooing the kids away with his hand. You guys could go ahead and grill that fish, Lambert, Uncle Boo said. I'm not hungry yet. Okay, if you say so. Lambert nodded. Guys, pack up. We're going back to the camp. Aren't you going to try to at least persuade me to come with you guys? Nah, men with no backbone are not popular with the ladies. You bastard child. Uncle Boo glared at Lambert, turning the boy into stone. The other teenagers who saw their comrade get turned into stone chuckled before leaving the petrified boy behind. Everyone run. Uncle Boo is getting embarrassed again. Last one to run will get turned into stone. Ha ha ha. Uncle Boo snorted before returning to his fishing. Clearly, he intended to only leave the river once he had caught a fish. He didn't believe that he would be unable to catch anything if he tried. 13 watched this scene unravel from a safe distance and frowned. Everything that he saw seemed unreal, that he was having a hard time believing it. According to Tiona, the middle-aged man named Uncle Boo was the beholder that they were looking for. Monsters transforming into human form wasn't uncommon. In fact, it was very common, especially for rank 7 monsters and above. But not all monsters would choose to transform into demi-humans because they felt like it was beneath them to take such a form. Why are the Wanderers acting as if one of their comrades getting petrified isn't a big deal? 13 thought. Have they been brainwashed? When he returned to the second island, he told his sister and the others about the current situation on the first island. After that, 13 didn't tarry and immediately began his trip to the fourth island, intending to check the pyramid located there. However, just like he did on the first island, he decided to check the conditions of the Wanderers first. Unlike the first island, where the unicorn had gathered the girls to serve him and left the boys behind, the beholder in the fourth island seemed to have integrated himself with the team of Wanderers, even allowing them to call him Uncle Boo. Jinns and Magients liked to eat humans, but they loved to eat Wanderers more because they were like a delicacy to them. This was why 13 found the relationship between the beholder and the Wanderers on the fourth island truly strange. Not only were the kids getting along with the beholder, they didn't even seem worried when one of their comrades had been turned into stone right in front of them. Just as 13 was thinking about these things, the petrified Wanderer returned to a normal state as if nothing had happened. "Uncle Boo, you should learn to control that temper of yours," Lambert said. "You won't get popular with the ladies if you're always like this. Shut up, or do you want me to turn you into a stone and throw you at the sea?" Uncle Boo snorted. "I'm sure you'll be popular with the fishes there." Lambert lightly cleared his throat before walking away while whistling. Clearly, he pretended that he didn't hear what the beholder had said and went back to their camp to eat some fish. Seeing this scene, 13 couldn't help but scratch his head. He didn't know what to feel or think about this sudden turn of events. Of course, he knew that there were Magients who liked to coexist with people, and some of them even became the guardian deity of several human cities. But seeing the beholder, who was known as one of the fiercest and deadliest Magients in existence, act like this made him wonder if Uncle Boo was an exception to his racial traits. "Well, as long as they are safe, I guess I don't need to make contact with them," 13 thought before he stealthily left the scene and went to the cave where Blackie was currently resting. He didn't dare to bring Blackie near the beholder because there was a risk that the rank 8 sovereign would feel the presence of a lower rank sovereign. The last thing he wanted to happen was for Blackie to become dog food to the beholder. Uncle Boo, who was still fishing, glanced in the direction where 13 had been hiding earlier with a calm expression on his face. He stared in that direction for half a minute before pulling his attention back to fishing, until he caught at least one fish to show the Wanderers that he, too, could catch them. He had no plans on returning to the camp. After nearly an hour of backtracking, 13 reached the cave where Blackie was currently resting and saw the nightmare black hound chewing a piece of bone that belonged to a monster that it had killed the day before. "Tiona, remember, safety first," 13 stated. Tiona nodded her head in understanding before burrowing into the ground. The 10-year-old took a deep breath before closing his eyes to meditate. While the beholder's actions confused him, he knew that this was the perfect opportunity for Tiona to do her infiltration mission. The black snake swam under the ground at great speeds, reaching her destination in just 15 minutes. She had gained a bit of confidence after her first infiltration mission against the unicorn, so she was feeling more motivated than last time in checking the second pyramid in the Arcadia archipelago. After triple-checking that the beholder was truly not within the pyramid, Tiona poked her head out of the ground and looked around at her surroundings. The structure of the two pyramids were nearly identical. Since she had already visited one of them, it was not that hard for her to find out where the rooms containing the writings were located. Using her previous experience, Tiona crawled up the wall and moved towards the center of the pyramid. Just as she expected, the room with the monolith was in the same place. The only difference was that instead of purple, the color of the tablet in this particular room was gold. Tiona looked at the tablet from top to bottom and from bottom to top, making sure that she had seen everything. When she was done, she went to the next room and looked at the symbols written on the monoliths and walls. Unlike what happened in the first pyramid, the beholder neither returned nor showed any signs that he had detected someone inside the pyramid. This emboldened Tiona, but she still practiced safety above all. Her master had repeatedly told her that overconfidence was a slow and insidious killer. So, even if she wasn't sensing any threat in her surroundings, she made sure to keep her guard up and to be prepared for anything. 3 hours later, Tiona had already visited all the rooms in the pyramid, as well as seen all the symbols on the pyramid's walls. After making sure that she had truly visited all the rooms, the black snake once again burrowed herself on the ground in order to head back to her master. 13, who had been paying close attention to Tiona, sighed in relief before opening his eyes. However, as soon as he regained his vision, The first thing he saw was a middle-aged man crouching in front of him with an amused look on his face. Blackie, who was supposed to be guarding 13, was curled up behind the boy and shivered from time to time. As much as he wanted to protect his master, there was simply no way he could do anything to a rank 8 sovereign, who was now looking at the 10-year-old with a devilish smile on his face. "Well then, I guess introductions are in order, right?" Uncle Boo said as he looked at the 10-year-old who was looking back at him with a calm expression on his face. "The name is Boo. You can call me Uncle Boo. What's your name?" "Zion," 13 replied. "So, Zion, I've never seen you on the island until now." Uncle Boo looked at the younger boy with great interest. "Did you just arrive here?" "Yes," 13 answered. "So, tell me, why did you send the Domini Mortis to the pyramid?" Uncle Boo asked. "Are you perhaps looking for something?" 13 nodded. "I want to see if there is something inside the pyramid that can help me clear my mission." The beholder was a rank 8 monster that could kill him any time, or worse, turn him into stone for an unknown period of time. Since that was the case, he decided to be a little honest and see if the other party would be just as merciful and kind to him as he was to the other wanderers. "Are you talking about the mission about the gate of the Moonlight?" "Yes, that one." Uncle Boo chuckled after hearing the boy's answer. Suddenly, he raised his hand and grabbed something from behind his body. Tiona, who had recognized the beholder, decided to launch a sneak attack from behind in order to help save her master. Unfortunately for her, she was already in the beholder's detection range, so it was very easy for him to neutralize a mere rank 1 monster. "Zion, tell me something. How did someone as young as you get your hands on a Domini Mortis?" Uncle Boo asked. "Also, that monster behind you is a rank 5 sovereign. It looked like it was protecting you earlier, which greatly confuses me. How did someone, who isn't supposed to be here in the first place, tame such a beast? You're too young to be a wanderer. So, tell me who sent you." 13 blinked once, because he did look younger than the other wanderers. But he didn't expect that the beholder knew a lot about wanderers, including the requirement to become one. "Would you believe me if I told you that I was spirited away despite not being of age?" "Well, I guess I can. That's the only explanation that I can think of as to why you are here. But you don't originally belong to this island either. That hound and this snake aren't natives of Arcadia. Then, that only means one thing. You traveled to this island, no?" 13 was quite impressed by Uncle Boo's intellect. The latter had even accurately guessed that he wasn't a native of the island, and that he had indeed traveled to the Arcadia archipelago. Seeing that the younger boy wasn't answering, Uncle Boo chuckled before dangling Tiona in front of him. "Take her, and make sure that she won't attack me again," Uncle Boo said as he handed the black snake to her master. "Although I'm a pacifist, that doesn't mean that I won't attack if someone tries to attack me first. Of course, I won't really kill the Domini Mortis. After all, killing it would also spell my death. I'm not that stupid." 13 told Tiona to not attack the beholder before gently holding her in his hands. The black snake crawled up to the boy's neck and coiled herself around it like she usually did. She was still wary about the beholder, but since it didn't make any move to harm her or her master, she decided to just observe him for now. "You're one interesting wanderer," Uncle Boo said while rubbing his chin. A moment later, he stood up and motioned for 13 to follow him. "Come with me," Uncle Boo said. "It's time to show those brats my triumphant return." The middle-aged man picked up the wooden pail beside him, which contained 2 fishes. Since the beholder didn't seem to show any hostility or aggression towards him, 13 decided to follow him for the time being and better understand why he was acting this way. Wanderers camp on the 4th island. "Here, eat some more," Lambert said as he handed Zion another grilled fish that they had caught from the river. "Thanks," 13 replied, and ate the grilled fish that was handed to him. He still couldn't believe how his circumstances had changed so quickly. One moment, he was meditating inside the cave and watching over Tiona as she infiltrated the pyramid. The next second, he found himself staring face to face with the beholder. Fruanovel.com. After that, he was taken to the Wanderers' camp, where he received a very warm welcome. The Wanderers couldn't help but contain their excitement after hearing Zion's name. Although he didn't say his surname, the teenagers easily identified him as Zion Levinus because of his features. I can't believe that a celebrity like you is here on the island. A wanderer who went by the name Darren said. Man, do you have any idea how famous you are in Pangea? Oh, is he famous? Uncle Boo asked as he ate the grilled fish that he had personally caught. Really famous, Lambert stated. I mean, he has played a major role in the death of a Magian prince. Uncle Boo immediately began coughing because he choked on the grilled fish that he was eating. Lambert hurriedly handed him a cup of water, which the beholder took and drank greedily. After regaining his composure, he once again looked at the younger boy, who was calmly eating the grilled fish in his hands as if he was used to being treated as a celebrity. It seems like you have a story to tell, Zion. Uncle Boo wrapped his arm around the 10-year-old's shoulders in a friendly manner and smirked. Why don't you tell us about this glorious feat of defeating a Magian prince? I'm sure everyone here wants to hear that story, right everyone? Yes, I want to hear it. Please tell us. 13, who had been strong-armed into telling the story, sighed in his heart before he began the tale. Just like a good storyteller, he exaggerated the story to great heights, making Uncle Boo and the wanderers listen to him with mesmerized looks on their faces. The story had a lot of action, mystery, adventure, and tragedy. 13 didn't mention the deaths of his subordinates, because he wouldn't be able to explain how they were revived if the other wanderers were to see them. He just said that all of them suffered serious injuries and was almost at the brink of death when the battle ended. Blackish shuddered as a sobbing Uncle Boo patted its head, telling him that he did a good job surviving the Magian prince. When 13 came to the part where the fiend, Mammon, descended on the battlefield, everyone felt goosebumps. The 7 Celestials and the 7 Fiends were legendary beings who were often spoken about in the various human cities. Tales of their feats were something that everyone loved to hear, so 13's story about Mammon's descent made them feel as if their blood were boiling. In the end, Arundel died after his head was sliced off from his body by Cranky, 13 said. Mammon then left with the Magian prince's body, as well as his entire army that had been turned into gold. That's how the battle, which has been recorded by the historians of the Valbera archipelago, ended. They called it the Battle of the Destroyer and even made a statue of me in the Valbera archipelago. It's quite embarrassing, really. All I did was lure the Magian prince to the formation and let my right-handman, Christopher Rotambus, deal the finishing blow. The story about me has been exaggerated too much. Even so, luring a Magian prince into a trap is not something anyone can do, Lambert said as he wiped the tears at the corner of his eyes. Even the monarchs wouldn't do such a thing. 13 nodded his head because he believed that Lambert was right. After finishing his tale, the other wanderers then asked 13 why he traveled to the Arcadia archipelago. It's because I suddenly received a mission, 13 explained. It told me that if I go to the Arcadia archipelago, I will be able to finally return home. So here I am. I've been in Solterra for 3 years, and I really want to go home badly. I'm sure that my family misses me very much. Lambert and the others felt touched and pitied Zion because he had experienced too many hardships. Don't worry. I'm sure that you will be able to go home soon, Lambert said as he held 13's hands. In less than 7 weeks, the lunar eclipse will happen and the gate of the Moonlight will open. We will finally be able to return to Pangea. 13's eyes widened in shock because he thought that only he knew this information. But after hearing Lambert's words, he couldn't help but ask him how he found out about this information. Uncle Boo told us, Lambert replied. He said that as long as we wait until the lunar eclipse, the gate of the Moonlight will appear, and all of us just need to enter it so that we can go home. I'm really lucky that I was sent here to the Arcadia archipelago, Darren said. I really thought that I was going to die, but Uncle Boo saved me. Now I just have to wait until the lunar eclipse, and I will be able to return home. I hope all my quests are this easy. Contrary to what the optimistic wanderers believed, 13 never thought that this quest was easy. In fact, he even felt great anxiety because his old man, the system god, wouldn't give him an easy quest for his final trial. Besides, his mission wasn't about entering the gate of the Moonlight. It was to prevent the Moon Princess from getting corrupted. As to who the Moonlight Princess was and how she would get corrupted, 13 had no idea. But his gut instinct was telling him that this was not going to be an easy mission. The reason for this was simple. Uncle Boo, who seemed very friendly and amiable, made him feel that he was more dangerous than the unicorn who was staying at the first island of the Arcadia archipelago. But in order to hide the fear in his heart, he just smiled and nodded at Lambert's words. "Yes, this is going to be a walk in the park," 13 said. "All of us will finally be able to go home and see our families." "Isn't that a good thing?" Uncle Boo commented. "Family is important. I had a family once, and I know just how important they are. Human lives are fleeting, and all of you are like small sparks that bloom for a brief moment before disappearing forever. I sincerely wish that all of you will be able to reunite with your families, just as much as I want to be reunited with mine." The Wanderers was happy to hear that Uncle Boo had the same sentiment as them. But amidst this happiness, the system of cannon Fodders could only hope that he would be able to solve the mystery in the Arcadia archipelago before the arrival of the lunar eclipse. On a small hill overlooking the camp of the Wanderers on the fourth island, 13 was sitting in meditation. Tiona let out a low hiss, prompting the young man to slowly open his eyes. The sun was starting to rise from the east, peeking over the horizon and bathing the world with its radiance. After deciphering the ancient text from the second pyramid, 13 was finally able to understand what the two pyramids represented and what role they played in the bigger picture. And it filled him with dread. In less than 7 weeks, the lunar eclipse would happen, and with it, a gateway would open. From that gateway, several moonwalkers would appear. Their goal was to kill all rank 2 monsters and above in the island, using their blood to conduct a special ceremony that would corrupt the Moon Princess, transforming her into a being that fit their needs. They would then take her back to their own plane of existence. As to what would happen to the Moon Princess, no one really knew, for no one had managed to live to tell the tale. At least, that was what it looked like on the surface. In order to confirm a few things, 13 would need to talk to Uncle Boo, since the Magians seemed to know about the upcoming ritual. He had observed the rank 8 sovereign for an entire day, and from what he could see, the latter genuinely wanted to get along with the Wanderers. After weighing the pros and cons, 13 finally came to a decision. "So have you come to a decision?" Uncle Boo suddenly appeared beside 13 and whispered in his ears, almost making him jump in surprise. Tiona hissed angrily at the middle-aged man because she was also surprised by his sudden appearance. "Don't do that again, Uncle Boo," 13 said as he patted his chest. "You almost gave me a heart attack." "Nonsense," Uncle Boo replied. "You are too young to have a heart attack." The middle-aged man, with long black hair and brown eyes, sat cross-legged beside the boy and stared at the rising sun in the distance. He looked like someone who had weathered countless hardships in life, and the aura he emitted had a tinge of sadness to it. "Uncle Boo, tell me more about the lunar eclipse," 13 stated. "I'm sure that we can't just waltz into the gate of the Moonlight like you always say. The missions given to Wanderers aren't that easy. There must be a catch." Uncle Boo chuckled, but didn't say anything, his gaze remaining fixed on the sun poking its head over the sea. 5 minutes later, Uncle Boo finally started to talk. "Once upon a time, a beautiful girl was born in the Arcadia archipelago." Uncle Boo started his story. "She wasn't born the way humans give birth to their children. No, when she was born, a heavenly apparition appeared. The moons, Artem and Chandria, overlapped with each other in the heavens, as if they were kissing. A moment later, a moonbeam descended from the skies and landed on the Arcadia archipelago. From that moonbeam appeared a girl who would soon be known as Callie." Uncle Boo's expression softened as he mentioned the girl's name, making him look at least 10 years younger. If we go by human years, Callie looked like a young girl who was around 8 to 10 years old. She was strong, smart, and filled with curiosity. All the monsters on the island wanted to eat her because, in their eyes, she was special, very special. A chuckle escaped Uncle Boo's lips as if he remembered something very funny. One day, after running away from a rank 4 overlord, Callie hid inside a cave. She had just eaten, so she decided that she would take a nap until the monster pursuing her gave up and went away. But on that particular day, something unexpected happened. Callie dreamt, and from that dream, a beholder who wasn't supposed to start existing in this manner was born, and he became Callie's first best friend and confidant. The two lived happily together and fought many battles side by side. 10 years passed since that day, and yet Callie aged very slowly. Even after 10 years, she still looked like a 10-year-old. But that wasn't a big deal for them, and the two continued to live their life happily. One day, while the two were taking a stroll on the beach, they came across a heavily injured unicorn lying on the shore. Being the good girl that she was, Callie nurtured it until it regained its health. But after getting a full recovery, did you know what that pervert said to her? Let me guess. 13 pondered. I'll marry you when you are older. Not quite. Uncle Boo snorted. He said, Too bad, you're still too young. If you're just a little older, I might have taken you as my bride. Out of anger, the beholder bit that bastard's face, making it scream in pain. Uncle Boo clicked his tongue in annoyance, as if he remembered something very disgusting. But since that day, that unicorn has stayed beside Callie as her protector, with the excuse that he is just waiting for her to grow up before he takes her to the main continent as his bride. Uncle Boo stated, The unicorn and the beholder were like oil and water, always butting their heads with each other. But they both worked together when it came to one thing and one thing only. It was none other than Callie's safety. Slowly but surely, their ranks rose until both of them became rank 5 sovereigns. With the two of them protecting her, no monsters dared to set their sights on Callie, knowing that if they did, they would meet their end. These happy moments continued for a few decades when suddenly, another phenomenon happened. On one stormy day, thunder and lightning roared and streaked across the heavens. In order to be safe, the three stayed inside their cave until morning. But when the sun rose, they noticed 2 pillars of light shining in 2 different locations. Callie said that they should go and investigate what they were. Wanting to please her, they obliged and took her to the first island. There they saw a pyramid, but she suddenly fell into a trance, then walked toward the pyramid as if she was possessed by something. They tried to call out to her, but that didn't do anything. So they did the only thing they could do and followed her. She explored the pyramid as if she knew everything about it. She paused to read the ancient writings while still in a trance. The language she used was not something that they could understand, but through their connection with her, they were able to piece together the message that was written on the purple tablet. On the day of the eclipse, when Chandria's vision is covered by the sun, the people of Artem will descend from the heavens to claim her child, Uncle Boo said softly. After that, she fainted, only to wake up the next day looking weak and very pale. It took her 3 days to recover, but as soon as she felt better, she urged the beholder and the unicorn to visit the second pyramid. The unicorn and the beholder tried to dissuade her, but she still went to the pyramid, leaving the two of them no choice but to follow her. Just like what happened with the first pyramid, she once again fell into a trance and read what was written on the golden tablet. Uncle Boo closed his eyes as if trying to remember that exact day when their happy and peaceful lives started to crumble like a sandcastle hit by a large wave. If the Moon Maiden wishes to escape her fate, she needs to make an important choice. Either shed her mortal body and possess the body of another living, or merge with an object to hide from her pursuers until they return to the heavens. That was what was written on the tablet in the second pyramid, which Uncle Boo had shared with 13. 13 nodded because this was indeed the exact translation from the golden tablet of the second pyramid. Basically, the 2 pyramids served as batteries that allowed the special symbols inside of it to calculate when the moon, Chandria, would have a perfect lunar eclipse. But they had one more function, and that was to create a gate that would open somewhere in the Arcadia archipelago, allowing creatures to escape the one-sided massacre that was about to be unleashed on them. This gate was called the Gate of the Moonlight. The unicorn and the beholder were too full of themselves, thinking that even if the people of Artem were to come, they would be able to protect Callie without fail, Uncle Boo said in a bitter tone. But Callie said that the two of them should just escape when the people of Artem appeared. When they told her that she should come with them and escape through the Gate of the Moonlight, Callie only shook her head and said that she was unable to pass through it. Naturally, the beholder and unicorn refused to enter the gate, knowing that if they did, Callie would be left behind to face the people of Artem alone. Since escape was not an option, the three decided to make preparations in order to fight against the people of Artem. Of course, they also planned their escape routes, just in case they proved to be too powerful for them to fight. Uncle Boo drank from his water flask before continuing his tale. When the time of the lunar eclipse arrived, over 100 moonbeams descended from Artem and landed on the island. From these moonbeams, human-like creatures with gray wings appeared. Some of them started killing the monsters on the islands, while the rest started to search for something or someone. As if they had some artifact that allowed them to pinpoint Callie's location, they didn't hesitate to fly in their direction. These beings were all rank 4 sovereigns, and there were over 100 of them on the island. While some started to kill monsters, the majority flew toward Callie's direction. Knowing that the time to fight had come, the unicorn and the beholder unleashed their strongest attacks and went for the kill. Callie fought them bravely as well. At first, they thought that they had a high chance of winning since they were able to hold their ground. But they became uncertain again when the beings from Artem used some kind of artifact that made Callie scream in pain, making her collapse on the ground. Just as the beings from Artem were about to capture her, the unicorn teleported to her side and transformed into his demi-human form. He then carried her like a princess and made short-distance teleportations in order to escape their pursuers. While they ran away, the beholder was busy killing and turning their enemies into stone. After some time, the lunar eclipse ended, and the people of Artem were forced to return to the heavens. They were only allowed to stay for an hour at most in this world. After successfully surviving the ordeal, the three celebrated and congratulated each other for a job well done. A bitter smile appeared on Uncle Boo's face as he continued the story. Perhaps, blinded by overconfidence, the three thought that they would also be able to fend off the next invasion during the next eclipse. But that was a mistake. During those 10 years, the beholder and the unicorn managed to become rank 6 sovereigns. Both of them thought that since they managed to beat their enemies when they were a rank weaker, they would easily trample them now that they had managed to make a breakthrough. But this confidence disappeared the next time the eclipse happened. Over 100 rank 6 sovereigns appeared, and this time they came prepared. The unicorn was the first one they neutralized. They created a field that made teleportation impossible. Once that problem was dealt with, they encircled their 3 targets and crippled them. Just as the people of Artem were about to kill the beholder and the unicorn, Callie begged for their lives to be spared. She promised to go with them without any resistance as long as her 2 friends were spared. The people of Artem agreed and took Callie with them to the heavens. After failing to protect the person whom they treasured, the 2 monsters fell into depression. The unicorn was even planning to leave the island in order to move on with its life. However, something caught its eye while it nursed its injuries in the first pyramid. The mechanism of the pyramid was still working and even calculated when the next lunar eclipse would happen. It thought that since the purpose of the pyramid had been completed, it should have stopped working. But it didn't. After this discovery, it informed the beholder what had happened, so the 2 decided to wait until the next lunar eclipse. Both of them desperately hoped that a miracle would happen and that the girl whom they both loved would return to them. However, something unexpected happened a few months before the next lunar eclipse arrived. Can you guess what happened back then, Zion? 13 didn't even need to think and said the first thing that came to his mind. Wanderers appeared. 13 replied, "You're right." Uncle Boo nodded. Wanderers appeared, and when the day of the lunar eclipse came, one of the girls who had appeared on the island started to glow faintly right after sunset. Then a few hours later, the gate of the Moonlight appeared, and once again, the people of Artem returned. The 2 monsters couldn't help but gasp in shock when they saw a familiar figure among the people of Artem. She was none other than Callie, the girl whom the invaders had taken away a decade ago. While the Wanderers were all desperately trying to cross the gate of the Moonlight, the people of Artem started to hunt them down. Of course, the majority of the Wanderers managed to pass through the gate, but many still died in the process. As for the girl who was glowing, she was taken by the people of Artem, and they did something that made the beholder and the unicorn start to rampage out of anger. Callie's body transformed into blood, and was poured over the girl whom they had just captured. The girl's features changed, and, after a minute, she transformed into Callie. This newly transformed girl then looked at the beholder and the unicorn and cried bitterly. She said, "I miss the two of you. Thank you for waiting for me, and goodbye." Uncle Boo wiped the tears that slid down the side of his face before continuing his story. Every decade since then, the lunar eclipse would take place, and every time, the beholder and the unicorn did everything in their power to save Callie. But despite the fact that they had become stronger than ever before, they were still unable to save her. But this time is different. The pyramids have said that this will be the final lunar eclipse and the last time that the people of Artem will descend on this world. This means that this is also the last time the beholder and the unicorn can try and save the person whom they have been trying to save for the past several decades. Uncle Boo then shifted his gaze at Zion, with tears streaming down his face. "You have defeated a Magian prince, right?" Uncle Boo said as he placed his hands on 13th's shoulders. "You have done the impossible, right? Please help us. Create a miracle. I'll do anything. I'll give you everything. Just please, save Callie." I don't know what the unicorn plans to do, but I'm sure he is also thinking of ways to save her. But unlike me, he is willing to use any method in his arsenal, even if it's something that Callie would look down upon. He has changed a lot, and we no longer meet eye to eye. The only thing he told me a few months ago is that he will find the Moon Princess first. As to what he will do to her, I have no idea. But he threatened me that if I got in his way, he would treat me as an enemy as well. He insisted that his way is the only way that can bring Callie back again. 13 could guess what the unicorn was planning, and he now understood why it had ordered the girls of the first island to serve him. It was probably hoping that one of the girls, who was currently with him, would be the Moon Princess candidate, saving him the trouble of looking for her. Suddenly, 13's face went pale after realizing something very important. Since the unicorn had taken the initiative to get the girls from the first island, then what was stopping him from getting the girls on the other islands as well? As if waiting for that moment, a screech spread in the surroundings, making 13 look at the sky. There, he saw Polka, who was flying toward him with an unsteady flight path. Visago, who was near, flew toward Polka and allowed the injured Poco to land on his back. A feeling of dread rushed over the 10-year-old's chest as Polka confirmed his greatest fear. The unicorn appeared on the second island, Polka stated. It took Sha and the other girls with it. After forcing those words from her mouth, Polka fainted, making Visago's feathers stand up with his anger. The outward expression of his anger revealed the level of the same emotion that the 10-year-old was feeling right now. High above the skies of the fourth island, a beholder was flying southward, headed toward the second island of the Valbera archipelago. Seated on top of its head was a 10-year-old who had his arms crossed over his chest. 13 had already given Polka a healing potion, and he had also asked Visago to watch over her as she recovered from her injuries. Even with Uncle Boo's speed, it would take them half an hour to reach their destination. Polka had flown as fast as she could, yet she only arrived at the fourth island after 2 hours of flying. She could have arrived faster, but her injuries were quite serious. According to her, she did her best to distract the unicorn to allow Sha to run away. But Pocos weren't really strong when it came to fighting. Not to mention that she was facing off against a rank 8 sovereign. Giga, Rocky, the ogres, and trolls weren't in the camp when the unicorn came. All of them were clearing the monsters on the second island to gather cores and monster parts for the wanderers to use. Before she left to go to 13, Polka went to find them first. After informing them of what happened to the base, everyone entered Rocky's mobile fortress to pursue the unicorn and attempt to save their master's sister from their grasp. Only then did she start flying toward the fourth island, fueled by sheer willpower and determination to inform 13 about what had transpired at the second island. "Don't worry. Although that unicorn is arrogant, he won't hurt the girls," Uncle Boo said through telepathy. "I know," 13 replied calmly. And yet, his fingers were tapping on his arm as if he was counting the seconds and minutes that it would take for them to arrive at their destination. Knowing that saying more wouldn't change anything, the beholder quietly continued to fly in the sky. Blackie, who was crouched behind 13, was gritting his teeth as if he was raring to bite the unicorn's body and feast on his flesh and blood. He didn't know if Giga, Rocky, Hercules, and the rest of his comrades were safe. During the past 3 years, the Nightmare Black Hound had formed deep bonds of friendship with the other monsters. The mere thought of them getting seriously injured or worse, dead because of the unicorn made him incredibly angry. Tiona looked at her master anxiously. Through her connection with 13, she could feel the raw anger that her master was barely able to restrain with his self-control. The black snake couldn't help but wonder if her master would also feel as angry as he was now if something were to happen to her. Tiona didn't know, and she didn't want to know. She would be devastated if someone were to take her away from 13 by force. Just this thought alone filled her with dread, let alone what would happen after. Meanwhile, as Uncle Boo sped toward the second island, the teenage girls whom a unicorn had asked to accompany him were nearing the beach, facing the first island. "Don't worry," the unicorn stated. "I will not mistreat any of you. In fact, I will keep all of you safe. Just wait until the lunar eclipse, and all of you will be free to enter the gate of the Moonlight as you please." Shasha, Miriam, Phoebe, and the rest of the girls, overall numbering in the 20s, walked behind the unicorn. The monster had threatened that he would kill the boys in the camp if they didn't come with him. Of course, Taiga and Kane didn't just watch the unicorn take away the young lady whom they liked. Both of them attacked the unicorn at the same time, but all it took to make the two of them lose consciousness was a simple shockwave attack. Polka was also hit by this shockwave attack because she had timed her attack at the same time that Taiga and Kane executed theirs. The other wanderers also wanted to help, but after seeing how strong the opponent was, they became paralyzed on the spot. In the end, Shasha at the lead stated that they would follow the unicorn as long as it promised that it would not attack the boys in their camp. The unicorn readily agreed because it really didn't care whether the boys lived or died. All it wanted was to gather all the girls so that it could monitor who among them was the possible candidate to become the Moon Princess vessel. Once it saw the first island in the distance, the unicorn was about to tell the girls that he would use its power to send them to the first island. However, before it could do that, the ground under its feet collapsed, making it sink into the ground. At that exact moment, two ogres appeared out of thin air with their adamantine-spiked clubs, ready to strike. The unicorn didn't bat an eye and blinked away, reappearing a few meters away from the ogres. "Filthy ogres, I will send you to your deaths," the unicorn shouted through telepathy. But, just as it was about to attack the ogres, its eyes widened in shock when it saw the ground under the teenage girls' feet open up, making them fall in a sinkhole. The unicorn didn't hesitate and teleported to the location of the hole in order to save the girls. But when it arrived to look down on the hole, there was no one. All the girls had disappeared as if they all vanished out of thin air, making the unicorn extend its detection abilities underground in an attempt to locate the girls under its protection. It was then when it realized that there was something big moving deep underground, making it neigh in anger. But before it could do anything else, it heard the roars of the two ogres who were running in its direction with their spiked clubs raised high, ready to strike. The unicorn sneered at the two monsters who seemed incapable of understanding the difference between their ranks. Since it would take time for it to hunt the monster moving underground, it decided to attack the two ogres first to vent out its frustration. However, it suddenly sensed the presence of other monsters in its surroundings. Turning its head to look behind it, the unicorn saw trolls, a giant beetle, and a skunk-like monster all growling and glaring at him in anger. Clearly, they weren't happy that a monster had dared to kidnap their master's sister when they were away. A few seconds later, the sound of roars and explosion reverberated in the surroundings as 13's monster squad fought against the unicorn with everything they had. Originally, the unicorn thought that it was going to be an easy battle. It might lack strength, but it was fast, deadly, and able to wield many magical attacks that could annihilate even rank 5 sovereigns without a problem. It could also do short and long-distance teleport, allowing it to attack and escape without any problems. It should have been an easy battle, but to its surprise and frustration, the monsters fighting against it were very cunning and didn't fear it in the slightest. Usually, lower-ranked monsters would be too intimidated by its mere existence, running away almost immediately. Aside from the beholder living on the fourth island, the unicorn doesn't have any rivals within the Arcadian archipelago. As the first island's apex predator, it hunted monsters, not the other way around. But this time, a group of sovereigns and alpha monsters were teaming up against it. Even after about 15 minutes of fighting, its opponents only suffered minor injuries. This made the unicorn start doubting itself, wondering if it had become dull after not fighting any strong opponents for nearly a decade. Unfortunately, it didn't have time to ponder such things because a spiked mace was only inches away from its face. Using its blink ability, the unicorn reappeared behind the ogre, intending to use its horn to pierce its heart from behind. But as if expecting this move, the second ogre readily unleashed an attack, directly hitting the side of the unicorn's face and sending it skidding a few meters away. A small wound appeared on the unicorn's face, making it neigh loudly. Dark clouds gathered as if to answer the unicorn's call before a lightning bolt descended from the sky and hit its horn. Die! The unicorn unleashed an area of attack lightning spell, which was enough to turn rank 4 monsters instantly into charcoal. But to its surprise, the ogres and the trolls that it targeted were nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, the ground under its feet gave way, making the unicorn fall into a sinkhole. For strong hands grabbed its legs, holding it in place. However, the unicorn teleported away, freeing itself from its captors. Can they also teleport? The unicorn thought. I've never seen ogres and trolls teleport before. While I was thinking about these absurd thoughts, several hooks were thrown in its direction in an attempt to capture it. The unicorn easily dodged and blinked away from these attacks. But as if predicting where he would land next, a 1 and O2 both threw their spiked clubs with all the strength they could muster, sending them flying like cannonballs. As soon as the unicorn reappeared in the battlefield, the 2 spiked clubs collided with its body, making it stagger. Ow! The unicorn couldn't believe that someone had managed to predict where it would appear, for this had never happened in the past. It then heard the whistling of wind, forcing it to summon a barrier around its body. Several arrows bounced harmlessly from the barrier it created, but the trolls never stopped their barrage and continued to fire in their direction. While the unicorn was fending off these attacks from a distance, the ground under its feet gave way for the umpteenth time, forcing it to teleport 3 consecutive times. It had learned that a single teleportation was not enough because its enemies seemed to always know where it was going to appear next. Although the injuries it received were healing due to its body's holy property, the unicorn was still very annoyed, unwilling to accept the fact that a bunch of rank 5 monsters were giving it a hard time. Little did the unicorn know that although it was indeed a strong monster, the ogres and trolls had faced someone stronger than it. After facing off against the Magian Prince, 13 subordinates were resolved to not die the same way they did in the past. All of them trained very hard as they accompanied their master on his 3-year journey across the main continent of Solterra. During one of their travels, they encountered a rank 7 unicorn and battled against it. This was why they were well aware of the unicorn's abilities. They had already experienced fighting one before. 13 had created a strategy that would allow his subordinates to fight monsters stronger than them. With this strategy, all the monsters under his command had become bona fide monster hunters. Hunters who hunted opponents that were stronger than them. The strategy was really simple. Rocky would remain underground and bring anyone whose lives were in danger inside its mobile fortress. He would then eject them in the enemy's blind spot, allowing them to land a blow. The troll shamans would predict where the unicorn would appear and tell their comrades to attack in that direction. Thanks to the teamwork that they had polished for the past 3 years, all of them moved like a single unit, able to dish out a constant supply of damage to their enemies while only suffering minor injuries. In simpler terms, they were playing dirty. 13 had drilled into their heads that they couldn't afford to fight fair and square against opponents who were stronger than them. Almost all the monsters that faced 13's subordinates died unresigned and frustrated. It might be a stretch to fight against a rank 9 sovereign, but it was still possible to deal with a rank 8 monster. They might not win the battle, but they would certainly not lose. Even if their opponent were able to heal and regenerate its injuries, Giga and the others fought and treated the unicorn as a training dummy that aided their practice to help them grow a little stronger. An hour later, the unicorn panted for breath while covered with GigaChad spray. It felt ashamed and embarrassed of its current state, but its opponents refused to die. Rocky made sure that everyone was safe and stayed hidden underground, away from the unicorn's attack range. Truth be told, if the unicorn didn't know how to teleport, it would have suffered serious injuries by now. Giga watched with regret as the unicorn purified its body with its holy properties, removing his acidic stink spray that would have melted any rank 3 monsters that got hit by it directly. 13's monsters were all exhausted, but their eyes were still brimming with determination. None of them wanted to experience the same helplessness they felt when they were up against Arundel in the past. So, now that they were facing off against a strong opponent, all of them gritted their teeth and used the fighting style 13 had ingrained into their heads and bodies. The battle was fierce, with both sides wanting to tear each other to shreds. Giga was even sporting a deep gash on its waist area, which he received when the unicorn teleported in front of him to stab his heart with its horn. Knowing that it was a matter of life and death, the Chad skunk activated its ability, Titan Heart, to increase its size. Instead of getting stabbed on the chest, the unicorn's horn only pierced its waist. The unicorn earned itself a smack on the face because Giga decided to exchange a blow for a blow. Just as everyone was staring down at each other, Uncle Boo arrived at the scene, making the unicorn pause. "Good," the unicorn shouted. "You're here, Boo. Come and help me deal with these bastards." The beholder, who didn't expect that the unicorn would ask for its help, glanced at the surroundings and saw the monsters who were injured all over. After seeing his subordinates, 13 felt proud. Despite looking as if they would keel over any time, all of them were still alive. Blackie jumped off the beholder's head and ran toward Giga. He then barked twice at the skunk before growling at the unicorn in the distance. Blackie had said, "Good job holding him back. I'll take it from here." Giga scratched his head before slapping the nightmare hound's bum, making it yelp in pain. Seeing the antics of his 2 subordinates, 13 shook his head before shifting his gaze at the unicorn in the distance. Rocky had already informed him that his sister was safe, so the 10-year-old felt as if the weight pressing on his shoulders had disappeared completely. "Uncle Boo, tell him to back off," 13 said as he slid off the beholder's head. "Okay," Uncle Boo replied before flying toward the unicorn in order to talk some sense into it. But just as the beholder was about to approach the unicorn, it disappeared and reappeared behind 13, intending to impale the boy with its horn. The unicorn didn't know who the boy was, but seeing that all the monsters seemed to look relieved after seeing him, it understood that he may be the master of these annoying monsters. Since it couldn't kill any of them, the unicorn decided to kill the boy, whom it believed would not be able to do anything against it. "So, it has come to this, huh?" 13 muttered as he raised his hand. In his hand was a purple sphere. When a unicorn appeared in front of the boy, the sphere opened, and something unexpected happened. The unicorn disappeared, and the purple sphere in 13's hand started to shake. A few seconds later, a clicking sound was heard. The unicorn, who had tried to kidnap his sister, was now sealed inside the sphere. Uncle Boo, who witnessed everything that happened from start to finish, couldn't help but shudder as he stared at the purple sphere in the boy's hand. "Zion, what did you do?" Uncle Boo asked despite already knowing what had happened. "Uncle Boo, I'm going somewhere for an hour or 2, 13 replied. "Please meet me at the base that we passed by earlier. I just need to have a good talk with this fella." 13 shook the purple sphere in his hand, as if to make a statement. Giga, Rocky, Hercules 0102, T1 up to T10, good job, 13 praised his subordinates. "All of you did well. I'll see you in a bit. Until then, rest well." After bidding his goodbye, 13 disappeared from where he stood. He went back to the Order of the Apocalypse to ask Metatron for help. The purple sphere was only capable of holding the rank 8 sovereign for a day. After that, the item would break, and the unicorn would become free again. In order to prevent that from happening, the 10-year-old planned to trap it in a place where it couldn't escape no matter what it did. So, what better place to take it then to the Order of the Apocalypse, where it would not be able to act as arrogantly as before. Inside the Order of the Apocalypse, as soon as 13 made an appearance, a certain death bat chuckled and blocked his path. "I've been waiting for you, 13, Kamisats said. "I have a proposal for you." "Hi, Kamisats," 13 replied. "Bye, Kamisats." After saying those words, the boy activated his token inside his body to enter the treasury and disappeared, making the death bat scratch his head. The little guy didn't even bother listening to what he was going to say. Maybe he's busy, Kamisats thought before shrugging. I'll just wait for him to come back after his trip to the treasury. Just as soon as 13 appeared inside the treasury, Metatron waved at him with a smile on his face. "You're back, 13, Metatron greeted. "That was faster than I imagined. Did you manage to use the item I gave you?" Metatron waved at him with a smile on his face. "You're back, 13, Metatron greeted. "That was faster than yes," 13 replied before handing Metatron the purple sphere, which could only be used once. "I wished I hadn't, but in order to complete the mission, I needed to do it. Metatron, please make this fella behave." The guardian of the treasury accepted the purple sphere and forced it open. A moment later, the white unicorn materialized out of thin air. It felt disoriented as it looked at its surroundings. However, after seeing that he was no longer in a familiar place, its gaze landed on the 10-year-old that it planned to kill just a few moments ago. "Die!" The unicorn then transformed into its demi-human form and charged at 13 with his fist ready to strike. "Oops, I can't let you do that to my VIP guest," Metatron said in a teasing tone before easily catching the unicorn's punch with his palm. "Violence is not allowed in this place." A cracking sound reached 13's ears, followed by a scream, as Metatron crushed the unicorn's fist, making it cry out in pain. "I thought violence is not allowed in this place," 13 asked with a raised eyebrow. "You're right," Metatron replied, "but I'm above the law, so I alone can use violence. Besides, the only way to make these arrogant unicorns behave is to make them suffer pain beyond what they can handle." After saying those words, Metatron casually kicked the unicorn's chest, sending him flying toward the treasury. "There's a legendary ranked Iron Maiden in the treasury that I haven't used for over 1,000 years, Metatron said with a devilish smile on his face. "I just hope he doesn't break easily." 13 watched as the Guardian of the Apocalypse chuckled while dragging the struggling unicorn inside the treasury. After pondering for a few seconds, the 10-year-old shrugged before following them from behind. Since the unicorn had tried to kidnap Shasha and had injured his subordinates, the least that he could do was to assist Metatron in torturing the arrogant monster. That was the only way 13 could vent out his anger, which he had been bottling up during his trip back to the second island. Soon, the sound of screams and begging reverberated within the treasury. But through it all, two madmen chuckled as they showed each other their own ways of torturing people, allowing both of them to expand their repertoire for the next pitiful victim who would fall in their hands. The unicorn, who went by the name Elyon, lost consciousness after being tortured for an hour. The torture devices inside the treasury of the Apocalypse were quite impressive, surprising even 13 due to their diversity. "Well then, I'll leave him in your care for now," 13 said. "Sure," Metatron replied with a smile. "I've read his memories, and I've got to say, whatever you're working on is quite interesting, 13. "Interesting?" 13 shook his head helplessly, which made Metatron smirk. The 10-year-old then left the treasury, while deep in his thoughts. He had also seen Elyon's memories, while he was being tortured, so he now had a gist of the power levels of the monsters that they were going to face. Each time the people of Artem descended on the Arcadian archipelago, there would always be monsters who were of the same rank as the unicorn and the beholder, preventing the two of them from getting in the way of the ceremony. So, it was highly possible that they would be facing more than 2 rank 8 sovereigns before the last ceremony that would be performed on the island. The boy was so deep in thought that he didn't notice that Kamisats was right in front of him, making him bump his head on the death bat. "You should really look where you are walking, 13. Kamisats chuckled as he looked at the boy who was rubbing his head with a pained expression on his face. "Do you have a problem? Why don't you tell your best friend, Kamisats, your worries. We're best friends, after all. Since when did we become best friends? 13 blinked in confusion. Just now, Kamisats replied with a devilish smile on his face. Ah, before I forget, I have a proposal for you. This is a proposal that will be too hard for you to ignore. So I want you to listen carefully, okay? The death bat glanced around the room, making sure that none of the other members of the order was paying attention to them. You know, the two of us are fairly new here, so how about the two of us form an alliance? Kamisats asked. An alliance? 13 smirked. What's this? You've finally given up on trying to find my location so that your friend can visit me? After careful consideration, I thought that I shouldn't bully my junior, Kamisats stated. Since I have turned over a new leaf, I decided to start from scratch and have a partnership with you. So what's the real reason you want to form an alliance with me? It's because of the treasury of the apocalypse. Kamisats knew that 13 wasn't someone who liked to beat around the bush, so he decided to come clean. But before he could do that, someone else crouched down beside them, making the two look at the Magian princess Camersepa. I want to join this alliance, Camersepa said. But let's not talk here. Without even waiting for 13's and Kamisats' replies, the Magian princess dragged them to one of the private rooms within the order, which would prevent the others from listening to their discussion. Camersepa knew that Kamisats wasn't really trying to hide from the other Magian princes and princesses that he was going to form an alliance with their newest member. Clearly, the deathbat was planning something else, but Camersepa wasn't worried in the slightest. After making sure that the room was properly locked, Camersepa then asked Kamisats the details about his proposed alliance. I only want to ally with 13. Kamisats crossed his arms over his chest. I don't want you joining us. Is that so? Camersepa smiled. Then, 13, who among the two of us you want to be allies with? I'd gladly be your ally. Camersepa, 13 replied in a heartbeat. If he could get the services of a seer of her rank, he would be able to locate several things that he wished to find in Solterra. After hearing the 10-year-old's reply, the deathbat cleared his throat and chuckled. Ha ha ha. Okay, welcome to the alliance, Camersepa, Kamisats stated, which made 13 and the Magian princess look at him in disdain. Clearly, he didn't want to be left out, especially since he was the one who proposed the alliance in the first place. So, what are the details of this alliance you're talking about? 13 asked. I'm a very busy person. There are still a few things that I need to do in Solterra. Hayes, you're such a busybody. Kamisats pursed his lips. Fine. I already told you earlier that the reason why I wish to ally with you is because of the treasury of the apocalypse. After careful consideration, I realize that your potential for unlocking all of the layers is higher compared to the other members of the Order. As you may already know, my original goal was to find your location and send one of my acquaintances to kill you and take your place. But after a bit of pondering, I deemed that this would not benefit me in the long run. Even if I managed to make one of my friends the new member of the Order, it would take decades before we unlocked the second layer and above. As much as I hate to admit it, within the 3 years that you've joined, you already managed to unlock the second level of the treasury of the apocalypse. While I'm not sure how fast the others did it, I believe that you are the record holder for doing it. Also, I can help you gather as many rank 5 and above sovereigns as you need, allowing you to speed up the process of unlocking the other layers of the treasury of the apocalypse. All I ask is that every other year, you allow me to choose one item from your treasury, while I'll let you choose one item from my treasury in return. 13 crossed his arms over his chest because he found this proposal acceptable. Camersepa, who was listening on the side, smiled because what Kamisats said made sense in her point of view. After the deathbat finished saying the real reason why he wanted to form an alliance with a 10-year-old, she also decided to come clean and tell 13 why she wanted to form an alliance with him. When the members of the Order were trying to bribe her, so that she would help them find 13's location, the Magian princess only said that it was impossible for her to use her power of divination on the members of the Order. But this was only half true. One of the main reasons why she said that it was impossible was due to the fact that almost all of them had similar strength and powers. Among the Magian princes and Magian princesses, Camersepa was in the middle stages. Kamisatz had just become a Magian Prince, so he was just an initial stage Magian Prince. Older monsters like Beelzebub were at the peak of the Magian Prince, making him one of the strongest beings in the world, just under the 7 Celestials and 7 Fiends. Because of their ranks, it was very hard for Camarasipa to use her powers of divination on them. But it wasn't impossible. If she really went all out, she could use her powers of divination to unlock a few of their darkest secrets. However, she didn't do that. For her, there was no merit in antagonizing the other members of the Order, so she stayed her hand. However, 13 was an exception. Not only was he an ordinary human, he didn't even have a rank. Simply put, if Camarasipa was to use her divination on the boy, she would be able to unlock his secrets. So, she did just that. She used her powers of divination on the newest member of the Order. But, to her surprise, her divination result was blank. At first, Camarasipa thought that she made a mistake, so she tried again. Still, the result didn't change, which forced her to try again and again. After trying over a dozen times, she felt something she never felt in a long time. The Magian Princess, who was known as the Magian Princess of Prophecy, became serious. It had been hundreds of years since she had last gone all out. Even though she didn't know why she was unable to use her power over 13, she decided to use a vast amount of resources and cast her strongest divination spell to find out his secrets. A spell that never failed her in the past. And she did succeed. That was when she saw it. Within the abyss, a pair of giant green eyes stared down on her, as if she was just an insignificant insect that it could crush any time. Camarasipa wouldn't forget those eyes. Those were the eyes that looked on deities and gods in disdain, making her heart beat wildly inside her chest. For the first time in forever, she felt excited. It was as if she was looking at a pair of doors that, once unlocked, would bring forth countless horrors upon the world. Among the orders of the apocalypse, Camarasipa was one who truly wished to see the end of the world. For her, the world had become a boring place, so she wished to end it, even if the ending would result in her demise. The Magian princes and princesses might be strong, but at the end of the day, they were nothing in the face of the 7 Celestials and 7 Fiends. Even Arundel begged and pleaded for his life to be spared after Mammon descended on the Valbera archipelago. Camarasipa hated the fact that she needed to bow her head to those who were stronger than her. So, she did everything in her power within the Order, unlocking one layer after layer in the treasury, desperately hoping to reach the 13th and final layer, where Pandora's box was sealed. But she knew with every fiber of her being that it would probably take her an entire lifetime for that to happen. Right now, she had unlocked up to the 6th layer of the treasury. She was nearly halfway there, but this also made her understand how difficult it was to cross the remaining half, making her feel despair. So, in the end, she only put minimal effort in her endeavor because she knew that it was impossible for her to open Pandora's box. But there was someone who could do that. The one who owned those shining green eyes in the darkness that burned like green suns and looked on all of creation in disdain. Because of that, Camarasipa made a decision. In order to witness the end of the world, she decided to assist the weakest member of their order because, just like Kamisatz had stated, only 13 had the ability to unlock all the layers faster than any of them combined. The reason why I want to join this alliance is because I believe that you will let me see things I've never seen before, Camarasipa stated. I believe that you will let me feel things I've never felt before. 13 and Kamisatz looked at Camarasipa weirdly because they could tell that she was being serious, and yet neither of them could understand what she was trying to say. Okay, let's say that I agree to join this alliance, 13 said. What's in it for me? Will you both give me rank 9 sovereigns to become my subordinates? The corner of Kamisatz's lips twitched as he fought the strong urge to smack 13's head. 13, rank 9 sovereigns don't grow on trees, Kamisatz replied. In fact, I only have one rank 9 sovereign as my subordinate. Only one. 13 looked at the death bat with pity. Arundel had 2 of them, and you only have one? He might have had 2, but I have 4 rank 8 sovereigns, while he had none. Kamisats replied. In terms of fighting force, mine is superior. Camersepa chuckled, but she also told 13 that giving him a rank 9 sovereign was impossible. They were their strongest subordinates, so it was impossible for them to give the 10-year-old such a powerful lackey. 13 had already expected this, so he didn't take it to heart. He was simply wondering if he could get away with such a thing, so he decided to give it a shot. After all, asking didn't cost him anything. I'll come back in a few days, 13 stated. We'll finalize the details of our alliance then. For the time being, the two of you discuss on what kind of rules that all of us must follow. If what you present is acceptable, I will agree to join this alliance. Good. Kamisats nodded happily. With the three of us working together, we will become unstoppable. 13 smiled faintly because he was still half in doubt. Of course, he could tell that Kamisats and Camersepa were sincere. But there were many people who looked sincere, but deep down were black-hearted people. However, just like he was willing to trust Uncle Boo, he was also willing to trust Kamisats and Camersepa. In the end, even if all of them were just using each other, as long as there were benefits to be gained, he wouldn't mind shaking their hands. After promising to return after 3 days, 13 disappeared from the room and returned to Solterra. There he saw Uncle Boo sitting cross-legged in the place where 13 vanished more than an hour ago. You're back, Uncle Boo said as soon as he saw the 10-year-old appear. Where is Albion? Don't worry, he's still alive, 13 replied. I just need him to stay put for a few days because he is a variable that is outside of our control. Once he calms down, he and I will have a proper talk with each other. Uncle Boo nodded. Although he might be arrogant and forceful in his approach, his strength is the real deal. We will need his assistance if we are to save Callie. I know, 13 said as he climbed up on Black's back, who had also stayed behind to wait for him. For now, let's return to the base. I need to discuss a few things with my sister before I head to the first island. Uncle Boo, I will ask you later to bring the wanderers on the 4th island to the 2nd island. I need all of them to be aware of the real situation that we will be facing in the future. In your eyes, they might be weak, and I agree that they are. But they were sent here for a reason. The one does not do things half-heartedly. Since they have been sent here, it means that they have the ability to complete the mission that was given to them. Uncle Boo nodded because he didn't dare to not take 13's words seriously. After seeing what had happened to the unicorn, the stories about Zion defeating Arundel once again appeared inside his head. The beholder was now starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this final chance given to them to save Callie might not be as dark and difficult as he originally thought it would be. Taiga and Cain were in a sorry state after the two of them had tried to stand up to the unicorn when he demanded that all the teenage girls should follow him to the first island. The unicorn, Albion, seriously injured them on purpose, wanting to set an example to deter the other wanderers from fighting against him. Truth be told, none of the wanderers dared to fight against a rank 8 sovereign to begin with. Only Taiga and Cain were foolish enough to do such a thing because they didn't want the monster to take Shasha under their noses without a fight. Fortunately, Albion had no intention of killing them, so once the two of them were neutralized, he stopped attacking. Hoko was injured because she had also attacked the unicorn at the same time the two teenagers attacked him. Albion only snorted and unleashed a powerful shock wave, blowing them away and leaving them with internal injuries. The two of you are stupid, 13 commented as he looked at the two individuals who were lying on their bedrolls inside the cave. Imagine facing off against a rank 8 sovereign? Couldn't be me. Taiga wanted to argue that the 10-year-old had faced a Magian prince when he was just 7 years old. But since he was in pain, he decided that arguing wasn't worth it. Okay, drink up, 13 said as he uncorked a vial of healing potion from his storage ring and made the two teenagers drink it. Although he was saying bad things about the two, he couldn't help but give the two of them some brownie points for trying to protect his sister, despite the unicorn being several times stronger than them. But just as he was about to pour the potion into their mouths, the two closed them tightly, making 13 frown. What are the two of you doing? 13 asked. I still have to go to the first island. If you don't drink up now, I'll ask Tiona to bite you, so you can't run. See, can't we have some kind of reward or something? Taiga asked. That's right. Kane stated. For example, we would recover faster if it was Shasha who made us drink this potion. Of course, I am happy that you're doing this for me, brother. But at times like this, a reward should be in order, no? 13 looked at the two bastards in disdain. He was very tempted to pour the healing potion on their faces to make them understand their current circumstances. However, a soft and gentle voice spoke beside him, stopping him from executing his plan. "Let me do it, brother," Shasha said. "Are you sure?" 13 asked. "Yes," Shasha replied. "They tried to protect us earlier, so this is the least I can do for them. They didn't protect all of you. They just protected you. Even if that's true, they still got hurt because of me. So let me do this, Zion." Seeing that she was serious, the younger boy sighed and handed the healing potions to his sister. "I'll be outside." 13 stood up. "Come out once you're done." Shasha nodded. Taiga and Kane were overcome with happiness to the point of being teary-eyed. 13 looked down on the two fools in disdain, but he no longer said anything and walked out of the cave. A few minutes later, Shasha appeared behind him. "It's done, brother," Shasha reported before hugging 13 from behind. "Good job," 13 replied. "Those two are such a handful, but I'm glad that they didn't die." Shasha nodded. "Shasha, I'll be leaving for the first island," 13 stated. "It might take me a few days to bring everyone here, so tell Uncle Boo that I'll be back as soon as I can be." "Understood," Shasha replied. "Be safe, brother." 13 nodded. After giving his subordinates some healing potions and slathering their injuries with a healing balm, 13 left with Blackie to go to the first island. Since Poco was still recovering from her injuries, the boy asked Visego to stay on the second island and scouted surroundings for any other possible dangers. Giga, Rocky, Hercules, the ogres, and the trolls also stayed put because they didn't want the same thing to happen again. The unicorn appeared after they all left to hunt along the outer edges of the second island. This was also like why Rocky took some time to track Albion down and start their rescue operation. Fortunately, they managed to find them before the girls were taken to the first island. They only managed to stand their ground against a rank 8 sovereign due to two reasons. The first one was the strategy that 13 had devised, which ensured that none of his subordinates would die. For the strategy to take effect, Rocky would remain underground and forcefully teleport his comrades inside his mobile fortress to prevent them from dying. The Magma Balboa had already upgraded his mobile fortress, allowing him to instantly take those whom he deemed as his allies in or out of the space. After hunting many strong monsters with 13, they had refined this strategy to the extreme, making it seem like Giga, Blackie, Hercules, the ogres, and the trolls could teleport in and out of the battlefield. This was also what gave Albion a hard time. Unlike his usual battle, he was no longer the only one disappearing in place. His targets were doing the same, making it so he was unable to land a direct hit on their bodies. The second reason was that they had hunted a unicorn in the past, so they were already aware of what their enemy was capable of doing. After undergoing many life and death battles, their fighting abilities had grown greater than normal monsters. They were the team that 13 planned to nurture so that he could bring down stronger opponents and farm apocalypse points en masse to unlock the next layers of the treasury of the apocalypse. When he arrived at the first island, 13 went to meet with Rayon as fast as he could and told him that the unicorn wouldn't be returning for a while. Although Rayon was half in doubt, he believed that Zion wouldn't lie about something important. Because of this, he and a few wanderers followed the 10-year-old, who led them to the first pyramid to share the news to his sister, Rio. As they were making their way to their destination, 13 told them that he planned to bring them all to the second island, where all the wanderers in the Arcadia archipelago were gathering. He didn't want to explain the story more than once, so he planned to tell everyone what he knew when all of the wanderers were gathered in one place. Rio and the other teenage girls were surprised when 13 said that the unicorn was no longer a threat to any of them. Of course, they didn't believe him at first, but after some convincing, the younger boy managed to get them to agree to come to the second island with him. His ship was already docked near the beach. This time, only 3 troll shamans were manning it because the rest remained behind to protect Shasha and the others. The ship was big enough to house everyone, and their journey back was smooth sailing. 5 days later, all the wanderers from the first and fourth islands had gathered, and that was also when 13 gave a speech and told everyone the death-defying acts that they would need to perform in order for them to go back home to Pangea. 13 stood in front of the hundreds of wanderers who had been gathered to the second island for a mission briefing. First, let me tell you the true story about your missions to enter the gate of the Moonlight, 13 stated. 6 weeks from now, the moon of Chandria will undergo a full lunar eclipse. At that time, the 2 pyramids will activate and open the gate of the Moonlight. Its location is completely random, but it will appear somewhere here on the second island. But this mission will not allow you to waltz your way inside the gate. No, reaching it is a matter of life and death, because you will be playing a game of tag with rank 6 sovereigns and above, who plan to kill all of you because they need many sacrifices in order to perform an unholy ritual. Isn't it exciting? 13 smiled at everyone, who was looking back at him with pale expressions on their faces. But Uncle Boo said that we just need to wait for the gate of the Moonlight to open, and we can get back home, a wanderer who came from the fourth island stated. He never said that we would be hunted down by rank 6 sovereigns. Well, Uncle Boo didn't tell you everything, 13 replied. Perhaps he didn't want any of you to feel depressed because of how hopeless the situation is. Maybe you will get lucky and be able to enter the gate of the Moonlight. However, that is still a big maybe. Also, like I said earlier, you might not only be running away from rank 6 sovereigns. Rank 7, rank 8, and possibly rank 9 sovereigns might appear as well. I really pity all of you. Of all the wanderers to be sent on the Arcadia archipelago, it had to be you. The corner of 13's lips rose because, even though what he was saying was grim, Shasha remained calm, as if the information he was sharing didn't bother her in the slightest. To his surprise, Kane, Miriam, Phoebe, Rayon, Rio, and Lambert looked calmer than the other wanderers, who seemed to be at a loss about what to do. He wasn't aware that the reason why all these teenagers were calm was due to his presence. They had heard stories about Zion, and he had become not only a celebrity, but a pillar of support for all the other wanderers who were about to take their first step into Solterra. All of them believed that if there was someone who could help them survive this upcoming tragedy, it would be none other than the 10-year-old in front of them. The strategy that we will use is really simple, 13 stated. Once the gate of the Moonlight is spotted, all of you will run towards it with everything you have. None of you need to fight. All that you need to do is enter the gate and pray that you don't get cut down before you can run through it. So, starting tomorrow, all of you will practice long-distance running. You have 6 weeks to build your stamina. How much you train will have an impact on your survival. Fighting against rank 6 sovereigns of your current rank is just suicide. So run, don't fight. That will be your motto for this mission. 13 then paused before scanning the faces of the people in front of him. I will be honest, 13 stated. The possibility that all of you will be massacred before you reach your destination is very high. The beings from Artem will definitely place a few of their people to guard the gate of the Moonlight and cut down anyone who approaches it. But do not worry. Uncle Boo here will help you reach your destination to the best of his abilities. 13 pointed at the beholder, who had taken his human form, and was sitting on top of a boulder. He is a rank 8 sovereign, so he would be able to protect some of you to a certain extent. But even though Uncle Boo is strong, he is alone. The unicorn might return later to help us, but even with him, that would only make 2 rank 8 sovereigns against hundreds of beings from Artem. Out of those hundreds, there might also be rank 8 sovereigns. In a nutshell, this mission is nearly impossible to clear. However, although the one is unfair, it is also fair at the same time. You were sent here because you believe that you have what it takes to complete the mission, so believe in yourself and train hard for your own survival. 13 then glanced at Taiga, who was standing behind Shasha, and looking back at him with a determined look on his face. As you may already know, great rewards are given to those who greatly contribute to the success of this mission, 13 said after some time. This means that those who will choose to stay and fight will be able to reap great rewards if they manage to survive. That's easier said than done. A wanderer who came from the first island shouted. Do you expect us to stay behind to fight while you and your sister run away? Are you only saying those words because you plan to use us as cannon fodders to make your escape? The smile on 13's face lingered, and yet his eyes became cold as he gazed at the wanderer, who suddenly made an outburst. As the system of cannon fodders, hearing people being used as cannon fodders was a taboo topic for him. Let me make one thing clear, 13 stated. I will be one of those who will stay behind to fight, allowing all of you to have a chance to cross the gate of the Moonlight. As one of the heirs of the main branch of the Leventis family, I promise by my name that I will not enter the gate of the Moonlight until the last wanderer walks through it. Why should we believe you? Another wanderer shouted. Maybe you're just saying that now, but we'll change your mind later on. Shasha and Taiga looked at the wanderer with a glare. But, since the wanderer was looking at 13, he wasn't aware that there were two individuals who wanted to punch him to oblivion. Then let me ask you, who am I? 13 asked. Do you know who I am? Zion Leventis, the wanderer replied. Exactly, 13 replied. The one and only Zion Leventis. Have you not heard of me? The wanderer quieted down because it was impossible for the current generation of wanderers to not have heard of the boy who had faced off against a Magian prince and won. I have seen horrors you haven't seen before, 13 declared firmly. I have lost many individuals who were important to me. Regardless of what you think or do, I was sent here for a reason. I've been in Solterra for more than 3 years. I was sent here when I was just 7 years old. This is the last hurdle that prevents me from going home to see my family. So, there's no way that I will fall here. I will fight tooth and nail if I have to in order to go back to Pangea. In my eyes, no one is more important to me than cannon fodders. If you're a cannon fodder like you said you are, then you're one of my people. And as one of my people, I will ensure that you make it back to Pangea, whether you believe me or not. But, ultimately, the one who has control of your life is you. Whether you live or die will be up to your abilities. I will create a strategy which will give all of you a higher chance to succeed. Make no mistake, many of you will die here. However, many of you will survive as well. As long as you follow the strategy that I devised, your chances of returning to Pangea to tell the tale about your death-defying adventure is not 0. 13 then looked up at the sky as if trying to see the devised. Your chances of returning to Pangea to tell the tale about your death-defying adventure is not 0. Reaction of the Laplace demon and the one, whom he believed was observing them from the celestial realm. Wanderers, remember this. You have 6 weeks before the lunar eclipse, 13 said. Whether you use that time to despair or to work with me is entirely up to you. I will not force anyone. If you have your own plan for how to survive, that's fine with me. So, those who don't want to participate in my plan, kindly step to the right side. 13 waited and waited until 5 minutes passed, but no one decided to break free from the formation. Even the wanderers who were doubting him earlier stayed where they were. Very well, from this moment onwards, I want all of you to listen, 13 stated. Aside from training on how to run, I will discuss with you all the strategy that I had in mind. As everyone listened to the strategy that 13 had devised, none of them could stop themselves from widening their eyes in shock. Even Uncle Boo, who was listening from the side, looked at the 10-year-old in surprise. Why didn't I think of that before? Uncle Boo thought, if this strategy works, then these kids might indeed have a chance to survive. Maybe it can even help us save Callie. The more Uncle Boo listened to 13, the better his impression of the boy became. It was not only the beholder who thought this way. Even the wanderers who were skeptical at first were starting to feel hopeful because what the 10-year-old was saying was very ambitious, but entirely possible. This is just the first step of the strategy one have in mind, 13 stated after he finished his explanation. There is more that I will share with you in the next few days. But, until then, I want all of you to take your training seriously. Do I make myself clear? Yes. 13 nodded. All of you should rest for now. Tomorrow, we will commence the start of your training regimen. The wanderers dispersed as they were told, while some remained behind in order to form hunting teams, which would be responsible for gathering food for all the wanderers on the second island. Seeing that they had regained their vigor, 13 breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Fortunately, he managed to control his temper earlier and didn't lash out on the person who told them that he was just going to use them as cannon fodders. Shasha, Tyga, Kane, Herman, Rayon, Rio, Miriam, and Phoebe walked towards where the 10-year-old was standing. All of them wanted to discuss a few things with the younger boy, who had shown them a path to their survival. The next day after 13 made his announcement. "Run, you maggots!" 13 shouted while riding on Black's back. "My grandma runs faster than you guys." Shasha, who was running beside 13, looked at her brother with a smile. Their grandma, Lady Callista, was hale and healthy, and she had also regained her youthful beauty. It was only natural for her to run faster than them. After all, she was one of the strongest champions in the world. "Run like your life is on the line," 13 shouted, forcing the Wanderers to increase the pace of their running. Currently, only the intensively trained individuals like Kane, Herman, Miriam, Phoebe, Rayon, Ryan, and Lambert, the one whom Uncle Boo turned into stone, were at the head of the pack, leading the others. Shasha was in the rear, simply running alongside Blackie. At first, the leaders, as well as Shasha, were able to run without problems. But when 13 brought them to the sandy area of the beach, everyone was forced to put more effort into running because running on soft sand was harder than running on normal terrain. The Wanderers struggled, especially the ones who hadn't received any training. Some of them even collapsed on the sand and were left behind by the others. "Go ahead, Shasha," 13 said. "I need to help the stragglers." Shasha nodded before increasing her pace to catch up with the group at the lead. Blackie walked toward the fallen Wanderers, who were heavily panting for breath, and stood in place. "I know it's difficult, but you will thank me later," 13 stated. "If running is all you need to do to clear your first trial, then you should run as if your life depends on it. Since you're unable to run right now, then walk. If you're unable to walk, then crawl. When the gate of the Moonlight appears, you can either run through it or forever stay here in the Arcadia archipelago as bones. So, stand up and start walking." Gritting their teeth, the Wanderers pushed themselves up one by one and started to walk in the direction where the others had headed. All of them had determined looks on their faces, showing that they don't plan to die in a place like this. 13 watched them with a calm expression on his face. If possible, he hoped that all the Wanderers would be able to return home. But this mission was truly difficult for ordinary teenagers who still hadn't attained the rookie rank. Several hours later, the Wanderers returned to the camp, all panting for breath. Some of them were sprawled on the ground, breathing heavily. They no longer cared if the dirt got stuck on their bodies. Everyone had managed to arrive safely at the base, which was a good thing. Those who were truly unable to continue were picked up by Giga, Hercules, and the trolls, who brought them back to their camp. Suddenly, 13 and the other Wanderers sensed several strong presences that were headed in their direction. A 4-meter-tall ape, a winged tiger, and a 2-meter-tall gray forest wolf walked toward their camp with defeated looks on their faces. All of them were rank 5 sovereigns and were the rulers of their own domains in the second island. Behind them, Uncle Boo walked with a smug smile on his face. "What do you think?" Uncle Boo asked. "Not bad," 13 replied. "How did you convince them?" "We just had a proper talk." "That's good. Communication is important." The 3 monsters wanted to spit on the ground. The so-called proper talk that Uncle Boo mentioned involved threatening them to come with him, or he would eat them all. With a rank 8 sovereign threatening to kill them, how could they possibly not comply? "Listen, from now on, all 3 of you will follow the orders of this boy," Uncle Boo said as he patted the 10-year-old shoulder. "You can call him boss or leader if you like." "Well then, Zion, I'll go look for other monsters to talk to about our special operation." Without even waiting for 13's reply, Uncle Boo left, leaving the 5 sovereigns behind. "Well then, let's talk about our PLA." 13 wasn't able to finish his words, because as soon as the 3 deemed that the beholder was indeed gone, they roared at the boy with the intention to intimidate him. However, only the other Wanderers got scared of their roars, with some of the girls even started crying on the spot. To their surprise, the 10-year-old didn't seem fazed and simply looked at them with amusement. The winged tiger then decided to lunge at the boy, who was just a puny human in its eyes. But before its claw could even land on 13's body, Giga appeared in front of 13 and activated its Titan heart. The Blaze Chad skunk's size tripled, turning him into a 6-meter-tall monster. But that wasn't all. The moment Giga stood on his hind legs, he truly became a giant. With a single swipe of his claw, he effortlessly swatted the winged tiger, making it crash face first into the ground. The black ape pounded its chest with its fists before charging towards the Chad skunk with the intention to fight it. But before he could do that, the two ogres, 01 and 02, blocked his path and clobbered the ape with their spiked clubs, making it cry out in pain. The forest wolf, on the other hand, decided to run away instead of fighting. However, it had only managed to take 4 steps forward when a magma balboa appeared in front of it, blocking its path entirely. Rocky gave the forest wolf the "Where do you think you're going, buddy?" gaze, making the forest wolf whimper. "It seems that Uncle Boo didn't talk to you guys properly," 13 said after the 3 rank 5 sovereigns were neutralized. "No matter. I have better ways of communicating with hard-headed monsters like you guys." 01, 02, tie them up. The 2 ogres nodded as they picked up the adamantine chains that Rocky had spat out. All of them were used to hunting rank 5 sovereigns, which their master had to hunt to farm apocalypse points. Unfortunately, 13 lacked manpower right now, so he didn't plan to kill these 3 monsters. Once all 3 monsters were properly tied up and unable to break free, 13 crossed his arms over his chest and stood in front of them. "I'm sure that you already know about the incident that happens on this island every 10 years, 13 stated. "Powerful monsters from another world will descend in the Arcadia archipelago in order to perform a ritual. In that ritual, they will kill as many monsters as they can to serve as sacrifices for the ceremony. I'm not sure what rank you guys were 10 years ago, but you should know, right? The people of Artem would only sacrifice strong monsters, meaning the 3 of you will be hunted down without fail. Now, I'll give you a chance. Either join us in our fight or die alone. What is your choice?" The winged tiger and the ape roared in defiance. They said in their own language that they would rather die than serve a weak human. The forest wolf, on the other hand, remained silent, but its eyes were filled with defiance, mirroring the thoughts of the 2 monsters beside it. "It's good to see that the 3 of you have strong wills." 13 smirked. "We'll see how long it will last. Drag them away." Giga, Rocky, and the ogres dragged the 3 monsters away from the camp, because he didn't want the other wanderers to suffer from the aftermath of what he was planning to do. Of course, many of them got curious, so they followed Zion, wanting to see how he was going to deal with the 3 sovereigns. Several minutes later, "Giga, give them a good dose of your Giga Destroyer," 13 ordered. The moment the 3 sovereigns realized what the skunk was planning to do, all of them cried out in fear. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Giga's extremely potent stink spray landed on their faces and bodies, soaking them all in the most heavenly scent that they had experienced in their lifetime. The wanderers who had come to watch the show all retreated in haste, especially after smelling the foul scent that spread in the surroundings. The leaders of the different wanderer teams were horrified after seeing such a scene. Taiga, on the other hand, only smirked. As someone who had received Giga's spray more than once, he could guarantee that by the time his master's talk with the monsters was over, they would no longer dare to raise their voice against him, ever again. In a direct confrontation against the people of Artem, Uncle Boo and the unicorn, Albion, were at a great disadvantage. Not only did their enemies have great numbers, but all of them were also incredibly strong. Because of this, they never succeeded in their attempt to save Callie from them every time the lunar eclipse appeared. 13 had ordered the wanderers to train how to run, while he asked Uncle Boo to gather all the sovereigns and all the other monsters that were rank 5 and above. The 10-year-old knew that once the lunar eclipse appeared, the majority of the monsters that they had gathered would try to escape so that they wouldn't be killed by the invaders from another world. He understood that at the end of the day, these monsters would prioritize their own safety over others. That was fine with him. He wouldn't force them to fight. However, he would ask them to do one thing, and that was to run toward the gate of the Moonlight alongside the wanderers. This would give the humans, as well as the monsters, an equal chance to survive the upcoming calamity. As long as they all headed in one direction, The people of Artem would have to focus their attention in one place. This would allow 13, as well as those who planned to fight, to concentrate their fighting power in one place, giving those who intended to escape a higher chance to reach their destination. They'd be fighting against otherworlders that numbered in more than 100, so they needed all the manpower that they could get from the 4 islands of the Arcadia archipelago. After teaching the 3 sovereigns a lesson, 13 ordered his subordinates to guard the camp while he went to the Order of the Apocalypse. He believed that he had given Elyon enough time to calm down. The moment he arrived at the Order, he immediately found Kamisats, who seemed to be waiting for his arrival. "You're finally here." Kamisats chuckled. "I've been waiting for you, you know." Currently, only the Death Bat was around, so 13 paused and decided to hear what Kamisats had to say. The Death Bat told 13 that he and Camerasipa had finished creating the rules of their alliance. The 10-year-old listened from beginning to end and found the rules to be satisfactory. He believed that the one who worked on it was mostly Camerasipa because Kamisats wasn't eloquent enough to create a set of rules that would entice 13 to join the alliance. "Is there a way to reinforce these rules?" 13 inquired. "I mean, if you or Camerasipa decide to break it, I can't do anything to stop you guys. In short, these are just words that hold no power." "Ah, but it will hold power," 13 Kamisats replied. "As long as Metatron approves of it, the contract that the 3 of us signed will become valid. Anyone who breaks it will be kicked out of the Order and have their ranks demoted by 1 stage. You know more than anyone that we don't want something like this to happen, you know?" 13 nodded because he also believed that Kamisats and Camerasipa wouldn't dare to break such an agreement if they were going to be kicked out of the Order and have their ranks regress by 1 stage. A rank 9 sovereign and a Magian prince might only be 1 rank apart, but this gap was similar to heaven and earth. In order for Kamisats and Camerasipa to regain their ranks, they would have to spend centuries and vast resources in order to recover what they had lost. This wasn't something that anyone in the Order of the Apocalypse would risk because it would threaten their position. "Very well. I agree with these rules," 13 said. "Where's Camerasipa? I'm going to be a bit busy in the next few days, so it will be best that we take care of this matter now." She said that she needed to take care of something important in her domain. Kamisats answered. "She just gave me the proposed contract and said that she will return after half a day." "Okay, I'll return in half a day as well," 13 stated. "By the way, do the others from the Order know that the 3 of us plan to create an alliance?" "They probably know." Kamisats shrugged. "I mean, even the other members have their own factions and alliances within our organization. It really isn't really a big deal. I also have a feeling that they don't really care about it. In their point of view, they would benefit more from your death than from using you as a strategic option to unlock the other layers of the treasury of the Apocalypse." 13 smiled faintly, finding it ironic. Not so long ago, Kamisats was one of those who wished to kill him, wanting to benefit from his death. But now, the Death Bat, as well as the most powerful seer within the Order, had decided to form an alliance with him. Truth be told, this was something he didn't see coming. Even so, having a Magian prince and a Magian princess as allies wasn't a bad deal. After bidding goodbye to Kamisats, 13 headed to the treasury. The first thing he saw when he entered the treasury was the unicorn in his demi-human form, looking at 13 with a serene gaze. "Take me back," Elyon said calmly. After realizing that he might be trapped in a weird place for eternity, he decided that it would be best if he tried to negotiate with the boy who had managed to turn the tables against him. "I will take you back, but I have my conditions," 13 replied. "But before I state my conditions, I will tell you the current situation in the Arcadia archipelago. All the wanderers on the 4 islands are currently staying on the 2nd island. This was arranged to ensure that they would all have the chance to pass through the gate of the Moonlight, which will appear in a random location on the 2nd island." Elyon was surprised after hearing the 10-year-old's words. However, it didn't take long for him to realize that this setup was more beneficial for him. If all the wanderers were in one place, then he didn't need to take the girls into the first pyramid anymore. "Also, I asked your beholder comrade to gather all the rank 5 monsters and above all over Arcadia archipelago to the 2nd island. It's an uphill battle with just the 2 of you fighting all of them, which you have done for the past several decades. Your enemies already know what the two of you are going to do, so no matter how hard you try, the result will be the same. It will be best to use a different strategy this time to spice things up, don't you agree? Albion neither agreed or disagreed with 13's words. He already had his own plan for saving Callie, so whatever the 10-year-old planned was of no importance to him. Seeing the disinterest on the unicorn's face, 13 knew that it would be difficult for him to convince Albion to join his strategy. But, in the end, he decided to just let him do as he pleased. As long as Albion wouldn't interfere with what he planned to do, he would not stop the unicorn in doing what he wanted to do. Albion, I'll make myself clear, 13 stated. My sister is off limits. If she, for some reason, becomes the candidate for the Moon Princess, I will not let you touch her. One of the conditions that I will give you is that you are not allowed to do anything to her, or you will be automatically sent back here in the treasury. The 10-year-old's voice suddenly became cold and indifferent. What you want to do and what I want to do are different, 13 said. If you do not agree to the conditions that I will impose, then you will be staying here until the day you die. I sympathize with you, but the moment you involve my sister in your plans, you and I will become enemies. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Albion replied through gritted teeth. I will agree to whatever conditions you want. There were many girls among the Wanderers, so the unicorn believed that it was unlikely for that boy's sister to be the candidate chosen to become the next Moon Princess. As long as that was the case, Albion would follow his original plan without fail. 13 stared at the unicorn with the same calm gaze he had earlier. Uncle Boo had already told him what Albion's plan was, so although he didn't condone it, he would not stop it either. Like he said earlier, both of them had people they both needed to protect. The battle that they would be fighting in a few weeks wouldn't prove whose method was right or wrong. It would only show who was left. They sure are something, right? Uncle Boo said as he looked at the Wanderers who were doing their usual morning runs in preparation for the upcoming lunar eclipse. Whatever they do is useless, Albion, who was in his demi-human form, replied. If running could solve everything, both of us would have done it. But look at us. We are still here, waiting for a miracle to happen. They're just weak humans. The only thing they are good for is to be used as sacrifices. Uncle Boo was already used to the unicorn's character, so he didn't think much of whatever he was saying. Suddenly, the two rank 8 sovereigns heard a voice behind them. You're right. They're just weak humans. But did you forget? It's because of these weak humans that you now have a chance to save the person you want to save the most. 13 walked toward the two strongest beings in the Arcadia archipelago with a calm expression on his face. Since these weak humans are doing their best, why are the two of you still loitering around here? 13 asked. There are still many rank 5 monsters in the islands that aren't part of our team yet. Make yourself useful, Albion, and bring them here. The unicorn clicked his tongue, but he didn't do anything to antagonize the boy in front of him. He knew that if 13 wished for it, he would be sent back to that place where he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. Albion might look down on the Wanderers on the island, but he didn't have the guts to look down on the 10-year-old who had managed to trap him and torture him. Uncle Boo, stay in the camp and guard everyone, 13 said. There's somewhere I need to go, and I want you to hold down the fort while I am away. I will be back in 3 to 5 days. Make sure that no one slacks off in their training. Where are you going, Zion? Uncle Boo asked. Are you planning to leave the Arcadia archipelago? For a few days, yes, 13 answered. I need to make preparations before the battle starts. Uncle Boo nodded in understanding. Very well, I'll keep watch while you're gone. The beholder and the unicorn knew that 13 cared for his sister very much. Seeing that he wasn't taking Shasha with him to wherever he planned to go meant that he had no intention of escaping the island. The boy had already told his sister, Taiga, and his other subordinates, as well as the team leaders of the different Wanderer teams, that he would be gone for a while. Shasha didn't ask him where he planned to go because she knew that there was a reason for whatever Zion did. 13 took Blackie with him and used him as his mount like always. When he was a good distance away from the Wanderer camp, he used one of the items he took from the treasury of the Apocalypse and activated its effects. Although he had a skill ban restriction, certain items from the Order of the Apocalypse had effects that couldn't be negated by the restriction. Just like Metatron had stated, the restriction placed on 13's body also had a limit. There were items that the item ban and skill ban couldn't nullify. If these two restrictions were to forcefully try to negate the effect of that item, their structure would collapse. This would lead the restrictions that were placed in 13 to break, allowing him to be free from the shackles that bound him. The second item that 13 took from the treasury of the Apocalypse was a portable teleporter. It was a divine artifact that allowed him to set 3 locations as waypoints that he could teleport to. The number of creatures that the teleporter could carry was 6. 13 could use its ability once a day, and it was a one-way trip each time. This meant that he would need to wait for an entire day before using it again, which was the only downside of the artifact. Even so, its uses were quite impressive, so the members of the Order who had managed to unlock the second layer of the treasury chose this as their reward. After a flash of light, 13 found himself standing in a hall where a teleportation gate was located. The guard stationed there recognized him right away, so they didn't block him when he walked toward the hallway meant for VIP guests of their organization. Zion, Adira, who happened to pass by, immediately appeared beside him and gave him a hug. "You little rascal, where have you been? I haven't seen you for 2 months." "It's a long story," 13 replied as he tried to break free from Adira's hold. "Lady Adira, I'm busy right now. We can talk later." "Oh." Adira reluctantly released her hold of the boy, who seemed to be in a hurry. 13 was currently in one of the secret headquarters of Adira's organization, which went by the name the Order of Raziel. They were an organization that wanted to spread their influence far and wide. They moved in the light and the shadows, with each member having a role to play in the bigger picture. On the surface, they were an organization that fairly did trade and business. In the shadows, they did things that weren't exactly fair, allowing them to plant their roots deeply into the territories that they had set their sights on. Since 13 had stayed in this branch headquarters for a few months, he already knew every nook and cranny of the place. Adira, who also noticed where 13 was headed, couldn't help but frown. The reason for this was that the boy was headed to the office of the commander of the headquarters. "Zion, is there something wrong?" Adira asked. "Why are you headed to the master's room?" "There's a letter that I need to have delivered," 13 replied casually. "If it's just a letter, then why don't you give it to me? I will send it without fail." "I trust you very much, Lady Adira. But this letter needs to reach the person I want at the soonest time possible. Right now, only Lady Ariel has the authority to make it happen." Adira couldn't refute the boy's words, for her master was indeed the most powerful commanding officer in the base. If she wanted something done, it would be done without fail and without having to wait for the verification of the other members of their organization, who would not hesitate to do dirty work if the price was right. Upon reaching his destination, 13 didn't waste a second and immediately knocked on the door. "Lady Ariel, it's me, Zion," 13 stated. "Can I talk to you right now?" "Come in." A voice that was pleasant to the ears sounded from the other side of the door. Since he got permission to enter, 13 didn't hesitate to open the door and come inside the room. Adira hastily followed behind because she was very curious as to why the 10-year-old wished to see her master. "It has been a few months, Zion." A beautiful lady with long silver hair and gray eyes looked at the boy with a calm expression on her face. She looked like someone who was still in her early 30s when in reality, she was more than 100 years old. "Lady Ariel, I need your help," 13 said. "There's a message that I want to be delivered." "Oh." Lady Ariel arched an eyebrow. "Since you came to me instead of asking Adira for help, does this mean that you want our express delivery?" 13 nodded. "I want this delivered at the fastest time possible." "Well, I don't mind doing it for you, Zion," Lady Ariel replied. "But it will not be free." "What do you want?" 13 inquired. "What can you offer me?" Lady Ariel smirked. "Depending on what you can give me, the letter you want delivered could arrive within the day or after a month. I can offer you information." 13 smiled back at the commander of the underground base he was currently in. "I do love information. Tell me, what kind of information are you planning to give me?" "Tell me, Lady Ariel, have you heard about the story of the Moon Princess?" The commander frowned after hearing 13's reply. Are you talking about some kind of children's story? Lady Ariel inquired. Or are you talking about something that truly exists? Of course, it's something that truly exists, 13 replied. So, will you send my letter in exchange for this information? Lady Ariel chuckled before making a gesture for Zion to sit on the chair in front of her. Start talking, Lady Ariel said. If I like this information, then I'll see to it that your letter is delivered as soon as possible. 13 found this reply quite positive. So he began to tell the story of the pitiful moon princess, who wished for nothing more than for someone to end her life so that she would be freed from the suffering and torment that she had endured for the past few decades. Warrington City in Solterra. Michael Leventis, who was inside his office, suddenly heard a knock on the door. Come in, Michael ordered. The door opened, and a middle-aged man, who was one of Michael's most trusted subordinates, entered, carrying a letter in his hand. Lord Michael, one of our important business partners has asked me to personally pass this letter to you, the middle-aged man said as he respectfully handed the letter to his employer. Michael frowned, but he still accepted the letter and tore it open. Half a minute later, his eyes widened in shock before abruptly standing up from his seat. I'll be going back to Pangea for a while, Michael stated as he walked towards the door. Manage the affairs of the city while I'm gone. Understood, Lord Michael. The middle-aged man bowed respectfully. The second in command of the Leventis family walked swiftly toward his private teleporter, which was directly connected to the main residence of the Leventis family in Solterra. He didn't expect that his nephew, whom he hadn't seen for the past 3 years, would write him a letter. Due to the contents of the letter, Michael decided to let his father see it first before passing it to 13's family. The passage between the two worlds was smooth, and in just a span of a few seconds, Michael had stepped foot in the main residence of the Leventis family. The first place he visited was his father's office, but Arthur wasn't there. After asking one of the servants working in the residence, he was told that his father was currently in Lady Callista's villa and that they seemed to be spending some quality time with each other. Michael, who could go anywhere within the territory of the Leventis family, didn't hesitate to head to the villa to go and meet his father. When he arrived, he noticed that Arthur was smiling, which meant that he was in a good mood. I just hope that he will remain in a good mood after seeing this letter, Michael thought. Arthur, who already sensed Michael's presence, looked in his direction and arched his eyebrow. Are the affairs in Solterra already finished? Arthur asked. You finished earlier than I expected. I'm still not done with my work, Father, Michael replied as he adjusted the glasses on his face. I just came here to let you read this letter before I deliver it to Gerald and his family. Arthur, who took the letter from his son's hand, began to read it. Half a minute later, he had the same surprised look that Michael had when he first read the contents of the letter. What's wrong? Lady Callista looked at her husband, whose aura suddenly changed. Zion has sent a letter, Arthur answered as he handed the letter to his wife. It will be faster if you read it. Seeing how serious Arthur's expression was, Lady Callista thought that something bad had happened to their family members in Solterra. But after reading the contents of the letters in her hands, she immediately stood up from the couch and walked toward the door. Arthur and Michael shared a knowing glance before following the most skilled fighter in their family, second only to Arthur. The three didn't bother riding a car, since they could travel faster by running and jumping great distances. A few minutes later, they arrived at Gerald's home. The moment they arrived, Gerald opened the door to see who had come to visit them. Hello, Mother, Gerald said, completely ignoring Arthur and Michael, who were right behind Lady Callista. Did you come to visit Remy? Good timing. She said that she wants to see you. If this were any other occasion, Lady Callista would have already entered the house and showered her granddaughter with hugs and kisses. But today was different. There was a more important matter that needed to be addressed as soon as possible. Gerald, Zion sent a letter, Lady Callista stated. I want you to verify if it's his handwriting or not. Gerald's expression became solemn after hearing his mother's words. He then read the letter that was passed unto him before the frown on his face deepened. It's indeed Zion's handwriting, Gerald answered. Please come in. Let's talk inside. Lady Callista nodded. This was indeed an important matter that shouldn't be discussed at the door. She hadn't heard anything from her grandson for the past 3 years. And yet, the first update she got was Zion's letter, which told him about his current situation and more. Alessia, who was the last to read the letter, couldn't stop herself from reading it twice to ensure that she didn't miss any hidden messages or wordings that her son might have used in the letter. A moment of silence descended inside the room as the important members of the Levinas family discussed the contents of 13's letter and how they should deal with it. Pain and suffering. Those two feelings had always been constant in my life. The memories of warmth and happiness I last felt decades ago were gradually turning blurry in my head. My two best friends, who cared for me very much, were the only ones whom I could still vaguely remember in my hazy memory. Boo and Albion. They made me feel wanted. They made me feel happy. They made me feel alive. And most of all, they made me feel loved. I miss them very much, I said as I looked at the younger boy whom I suddenly found inside the hazy world that I was in. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or not, for even dreaming had become a luxury that I didn't possess. Then, can you share your memories with me? The boy asked. I want to see everything from beginning to end. I want to know everything so that I'll be able to come up with a plan to save you. Save me? I couldn't help but smile despite the pain I was feeling. No one can save me. Boo and Albion had tried multiple times. The only way you can save me is if you kill me. The boy shook his head before raising his hand to touch the side of my face. You've been hurt too deeply, the boy said softly. You no longer dare to hope because you know that having expectations will only break you. You no longer dare to dream because everything will disappear when you wake up. At that moment, I felt something warm and wet slide down the sides of my face. I knew I was crying because this was something that I often did from time to time whenever the pain became too unbearable for me to endure. Each time I merged with the body of one of those who were called wanderers by the people of Artem, my dying body would be born anew, only to break down again after 10 years. Unfortunately, I had reached my limit. This was the last time that I'd acquire a new vessel. After it broke down again, my end would finally come. Perhaps this in itself was a blessing. 10 years. I just need to endure 10 more years of pain and suffering. After that, I will be free. Although I feel sorry for the young lady whose life would be snuffed out and whose body would be taken over by me, I'm unable to do anything. I'm unable to stop the process from happening. I'm no different from a puppet being controlled by a puppeteer to do whatever they wanted with my powers. Just kill me, I stated. Emmy, that is the only way you can save me. If I were to die, the being using my power to break through into the rank of a celestial would not be able to reach his goal. I wanted to die so badly, for that was the only way that I could spite him. The only way I could make him feel despair like how I endured decades of suffering due to his selfish goal. Hey, the boy said as he raised his other hand to cup my face. Do you really not want to fight one last time? After the lunar eclipse, you will no longer have a chance to do anything. Are you really fine with that kind of ending? Yes, I replied. I'm already tired. Very tired. Then what about Boo? What about Albion? Even now, they're still planning to save you. Are you sure you don't want to try one last time for their sake? No. Tell the two of them to escape. The only reason why they're still alive is because the people of Artem are keeping the promise they made to me. As long as I cooperate with them, Boo and Albion will not be killed. I knew it already. My captors looked forward to seeing the desperation on the faces of the two beings who still hadn't given up on trying to save me. But I couldn't be saved. The two of them didn't possess the strength to save me. I can tell that you have already given up, the boy said somewhat sadly. Fine. You don't have to do anything except share your memories with me. I will handle the rest. The boy then pressed his forehead over my forehead and closed his eyes. Share it with me, the boy stated. If you do, I promise to save Boo and Albion. I didn't know what kind of face I was making right now, but whatever it was, I believed that I was giving the boy in front of me a look of pity. But this was just a dream after all. So why not allow him to see the horrors that he would be facing a few weeks from now? Perhaps on a whim, I decided to cooperate and shared the entirety of my memories with him. From the time I appeared in Arcadia up to the present. Decades worth of memories. Decades worth of suffering and pain. For some reason, The mere thought of letting the boy in front of me suffer through my memories filled me with glee. By experiencing my pain and suffering, wouldn't that make him feel pain and suffering as well? Why should I be the only one to suffer? Sharing this suffering was good because it would allow others to feel my pain. As I finished transferring my memories to the boy, I pulled my head back and observed his face. I want to see his expression change. I want to know how he would react after seeing my memories. Would the things I experienced break him? A part of me didn't want that to happen, but a part of me wanted it very much. But as I waited and waited and waited some more, the reaction I was looking for never appeared. When the boy opened his eyes, he looked at me with a gaze filled with affection, making me feel a stinging pain in my chest. "You pitiful cannon fodder," the boy said softly as he pulled me to him and gave me a tight hug. "You're only a pitiful puppet that is bound by the strings of fate and forced to dance for her entertainment." The boy then patted my head, making the tears in my eyes fall nonstop. Yes, I am a pitiful cannon fodder, forced to do things against my will. But soon it would all end. I only needed to endure 10 more years, and my suffering would finally end. "Worry not." The boy's words broke me out of my daze. "You are one of my people. The threads that have bound you, I will cut them all one by one. I will free you from the bindings of fate, and I will allow you to live a life worth living. And I will promise you one more thing." The boy then stood on tiptoe to kiss my forehead before staring straight into my eyes. "Those who look down on my people, those who step on their dreams, those who think that they can brush them off with impunity, will face the wrath of me." 13. The boy smiled and parted the hair that covered my face. "Thank you, Callie," the boy said as his body slowly turned into particles of light, slowly disappearing from my sight. "I look forward to meeting you soon." As his final words reverberated inside my head, I noticed that the pain that I was feeling in my body had subsided. It was still there, but it was much more tolerable. 13, I muttered. He said that his name is 13. I didn't know what happened, but for some reason, I was starting to look forward to returning to the Arcadia archipelago. There, Boo and Albion would still be waiting for me. But it would no longer be just the two of them. There was one more person who promised to save me. I, who no longer dared to hope. I, who no longer dared to dream. I, who no longer wished to live, suddenly felt as if someone had reached out to me from another world or dimension. 13, I said softly. I'll see you soon, 13. With that, I once again closed my eyes. And for the first time in forever, I started to pray to whatever gods that would listen to my pitiful prayer. Please, let my suffering end. Please, let this be the last time. I wasn't aware at that time that, from within the vastness of the multiverse, a wooden staff that was traveling at great speeds hummed as if to answer my call. When 13 opened his eyes, he found himself staring at the blue moon, which the natives of Solterra called Chandria. A dream? 13 muttered. Just as the last dregs of sleep were starting to escape his senses, he felt something wet on his cheek, so he used his hand to wipe it. Tears, 13 thought as he looked at his wet fingers. No, it wasn't a dream. He didn't know how it happened, but he managed to meet Callie in a dream world. There, he asked her to pass all her memories to him so that he would be able to come up with a plan to counter the people of Artem. 13 recalled everything he had said in that dream, and Callie's reaction to his words. He could still remember the resigned look on her face, as if she had already accepted her fate. The only thing she wished for was death, for that was the only way for her suffering to end. As if I would let that happen. 13 covered his eyes with his right hand. If I can't even save one cannon fodder, how can I possibly defy fate? A few minutes passed in silence when suddenly the thing that the boy was sleeping on moved. 13 found himself gently sliding down from the back of the devil-horned honey badger, who had been waiting patiently for 13 to wake up. "Good morning, Cranky," the 10-year-old said as soon as his feet touched the ground. The honey badger ignored the boy and walked away in order to hunt for its breakfast. It was giving "it's not like I waited for you to wake up before I look for food, okay? Don't get the wrong idea" vibe, making the boy shake his head as he watched the rank 8 sovereign of the Warzur Plains walk away. But before 13 could even do anything, he heard several voices from behind him. "Look, It's really him. Wow. So the stories were true. Be respectful, okay? Our king once said that Zion has a very short temper. The 10-year-old couldn't help but scratch his head because he was starting to remember everything. Due to the difference in time zones, it was nearly midnight when he teleported from the branch headquarters of the Raziel Brotherhood to the Valbera Archipelago. Since 13 could revisit the places that he had been in the past once a day, he had set a waypoint beside the monolith of heroes, which had been built to honor him and his subordinates. The monolith had become a pilgrimage site of the entire archipelago. Everyone undergoing their coming-of-age ceremonies was required to visit the monolith of heroes before they were recognized as true men. The devil-horned honey badger didn't attack these pilgrims and tolerated them to a certain extent. Cranky had already marked the monolith of heroes as part of its den, so no one dared to desecrate it in any way. Also, guards were stationed to guard the monoliths. A representative of the barbarians, tigerkins, trolls, and ogres would always be at the site, keeping law and order. These guards would stay to watch over the monolith for a week before being replaced by another set of guards who would also stay for a week. Since 13 was hailed as one of the heroes of the realm, those who were making their pilgrimage to the monoliths looked at him as if he were a celebrity. "Hey, is it possible for you to pass a message to your kings?" 13 asked the guards, who were looking at him with a respectful gaze. "It is possible," the barbarian guard replied. "We have messenger hawks that allow us to communicate with our respective lords. Do you wish to send a message, Lord Zion?" 13 blinked because being called Lord Zion nearly made him look behind his back to see if the guard was referring to someone else. But since he knew that he was the one that the guard was referring to, he just nodded his head. "Yes," 13 replied. "I need to pass a message to your kings. Can you give me something to write on?" The barbarian didn't hesitate to procure a scroll, as well as a piece of charcoal that could be used for writing. 13 scribbled a few words on the scroll, stating the message that he wanted to pass along to the leaders of the Valbera archipelago. After writing the letter 4 times, he passed them to the guards so that they could deliver them as soon as possible. After he passed them his letters, the 10-year-old did a few stretches before sitting cross-legged on the ground. "Time to eat." "Tiona," 13 said as he hand-fed the black snake a small beast core. He had plenty of food in his spatial storage because Adira made sure that he took the food supplies she prepared before heading to the Valbera archipelago. "I will return to the Arcadia archipelago after 2 days," 13 thought. "I just hope that everyone is doing their work properly even if I am away." Right now, there was a variable named Albion who might get in the way of his plans. However, with the restrictions that had been placed on the unicorn by Metatron, it would be extremely hard for him to defy 13's orders. Because of this, he decided to bring the unicorn back to Arcadia so that he would be useful for a change. 13 had ordered Albion to help Uncle Boo communicate with the rank 5 monsters and above of the archipelago and fight alongside them. What they needed right now were numbers that could match the army of otherworlders that would appear on the island during the lunar eclipse. Their enemies both had quality and quantity, so it was very important that these monsters cooperated with his plan. Similar to the Wanderers, the Gate of the Moonlight also worked on monsters and beasts. The gate didn't connect to a single place. It connected to multiple places. If the Wanderers were to pass through it, they would find themselves in Pangea. As for the monsters, they would appear at a random place in Solterra after passing through the gate. Simply put, the Gate of the Moonlight was the only way to survive the massacre that was about to take place. If hundreds of monsters and wanderers were to all head in that direction, 13 believed that even the people of Artem wouldn't be able to stop all of them. Now that he had acquired Callie's memories, he now knew the strategy that his enemies were going to employ when they descended on the Arcadia archipelago. 13 was someone who kept his promises. So, he would make sure that the invaders who had made Callie suffer would also be at the receiving end of his counterattack. Such a dirty strategy. 13 sneered after replaying the young lady's memories inside his head. Fortunately, I also played dirty. Let's see whose dirty strategy will win in the end. 13 understood that he was fighting an uphill battle because he was unable to use rune magic at this time. It was no longer possible to create an ideal battlefield against the people of Artem. When he used his rune magic to help Mikhail clear his mission, it didn't sit well with Laplace Demon and the One. Because of this, he was banned from using rune magic to help his family members clear their missions. If Shasha wasn't in the Arcadia archipelago, then 13 would be able to use his rune magic freely. But since this was no longer an option, he needed to create Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D in order to ensure that the Otherworlders wouldn't be able to one-sidedly massacre them and use them as sacrifices to revive their dying moon princess. "Zion, are you tired?" Shasha asked as she lightly caressed the younger boy's head, which was resting on her lap. "A bit," 13 replied. "Let me take a short nap, Shasha." Shasha nodded. "Okay." After a week of absence, 13 finally returned to the Arcadia archipelago. He was truly exhausted after handling multiple things in preparation for the battle that was about to come. Right now, he had only set the wheels in motion. He would leave again after a few weeks in order to make sure that the preparations he had made were ready. 13 had tried to contact Laplace Demon and the One, wanting to negotiate with them. Unfortunately, his call fell on deaf ears. Neither the demon nor the omnipotent being made any indication that they wanted to talk to him, leaving him no choice but to compensate for the lack of abilities he could use in the battle. 2 minutes later, 13's soft sleeper breaths reached Shasha's ears. She then held her brother's hand and patted his head. Although she hadn't seen him for a week, she noticed that her brother had become a bit thinner during his absence. She wasn't aware of what kind of things Zion was doing behind the scenes, but one thing was clear. He was not only doing this for her sake, but also for the sake of all the wanderers on the island. "You've grown a lot, Zion," Shasha said softly. "Back then, you didn't care what happened to other people. But now, you're actively doing your best for everyone." Tiona nodded her head in agreement with the young lady's words. She had been with 13 for the entire week that he was away from Arcadia. The Black Snake felt a bit worried because her master wasn't eating on time or getting enough sleep. It was for this reason that she was serious about preventing anyone from disturbing 13's nap. She even coiled herself on the boy's chest, ready to strike anyone who approached them. Hiding behind the trees, Taiga and Kane looked at this scene with envy. If possible, they wanted to swap places with 13 and sleep on Shasha's lap. Above them, perched on a tree branch, were Visego and Poca. Both Poca-Pocos were giving the two teenagers pitiful gazes, knowing that Taiga and Kane would need to go to hell and back if they wanted to gain 13's recognition. While this was happening, Uncle Boo and Albion returned to the base. 13 told them that there was no need to bring the rank 5 monsters to the second island. After acquiring Callie's memories, 13 understood that the monsters were aware of the upcoming calamity. As long as they were told that they didn't need to fight and that they simply needed to run toward the gate of the Moonlight, all the monsters would cooperate with the strategy. In the end, 13 asked Uncle Boo and Albion to tell the monsters to head to the second island on their own a week before the lunar eclipse. These strong monsters then began to make their own preparations. In the previous lunar eclipse, they were still rank 1 monsters, so the people of Artem ignored them and focused on the stronger monsters to sacrifice. They had seen the horror of this event, so they were aware that the same fate would befall them if they didn't do anything. 13 asked the Wanderers to chop down entire trees and sharpen their ends. Albion only snorted after seeing this scene, refusing to believe that such primitive methods would work against their enemies. But the Wanderers weren't fazed and did as 13 ordered. Shasha had told them that her brother did things for a reason. So if he asked them to cut down trees and sharpen their ends, it meant that he had a plan in mind. Is he perhaps going to build a giant ballista like he used in the battle against the Magian Prince? Phoebe, who was helping Rio cut the branches off of the 3 they cut down, asked. "Maybe," Rio replied as she gathered the smaller branches to be used as firewood at a later time. "But the thing I appreciated the most is how honest he is. Most people would hide important information because it might affect morale or make the majority feel despair. I admit that until now, I still feel like we have been given an unfair mission. Fighting over hundreds of sovereigns is not an easy task, especially if there is a possibility that there will be rank 8 and rank 9 sovereigns among them. But for some reason, I also feel like we stand a chance. It might sound weird coming from me, but this is what I truly feel." Phoebe nodded. "I feel the same way." When Phoebe's team was attacked by goblins, she despaired, thinking that it was over for them. But right as she was about to lose all hope, Tiona appeared to save them. Then 13 and his subordinates arrived and started a massacre, forcing the goblins to retreat. Phoebe would remember that scene for the rest of their life. If he hadn't appeared at that time, the teenage boys might have been killed on the spot, and the girls might have suffered a fate worse than death. Even now, Phoebe would sometimes wake up in cold sweat, having dreamt of that incident, days after escaping the goblin horde. Rayon and Herman, who were also cutting down trees not far from them, were having a similar discussion. Zion said that our priority is to just run towards the gate of the Moonlight and not fight, Herman stated. The things we are making right now are supposed to be our contribution to the upcoming battle. Since the one rewards wanderers fairly, he said that we would be compensated for doing this. But are you one of those who plan to simply run away? Rayon asked. Don't tell me that you plan to stay and fight. Herman asked back. I asked you first. Okay, you got me there. Herman sighed before speaking his mind. Truth be told, I plan to stay behind, Herman answered. Zion said that he would be part of the team that would attack the invaders and help distract them, allowing us to escape. I asked Shasha what she planned to do during the lunar eclipse, and she said that since Zion is going to stay behind, she would be staying behind as well. Rayon chuckled. If Shasha stays behind, then Kane will definitely stay behind too. Don't forget Taiga, Herman pointed out. That tigerkin is head over heels for her. Although marriages between humans and beastkins are more common now, it will still be an uphill battle for him. He will definitely stay as well. Rayon nodded in agreement. Actually, my sister and I talked about this yesterday. I told her that she should just run away, but she declared that she would stay and fight. She's more of a strategist than a fighter, so I'm very worried about her. Did you tell Zion that your sister can become a strategist? Herman inquired. Maybe if you tell him that, he will place your sister at the rear of the defensive formation, where she will be safe. I hadn't really thought about that. Rayon scratched his head. I'll tell him later. Herman nodded and continued to cut the branches from the trees. Although he didn't know if what they were doing would really make a difference, he decided to trust his gut instinct. After observing Zion for a few days, Herman understood that the 10-year-old wasn't the type to charge to the battlefield without a plan. Since the younger boy said that they had a chance of winning, Herman would believe his words and could only hope that he wouldn't regret his decision once the lunar eclipse arrived. Giga, Rocky, Hercules, 01, 02, and T1 up to T10 helped the Wanderers carry the sharpened trees to the place that their master had designated. While 13 had shared some of the information he had gained from the memories that Callie had given him to the other Wanderers, he kept the rest to himself, deeming that it would only cause the teenagers to feel more anxiety and despair. The only ones whom he told about everything he learned were Shasha, Taiga, and his monster subordinates. Shasha had always been a strong-willed girl, so 13 was confident that she would be able to handle the truth. Taiga and the rest of his subordinates had faced Arundel alongside him and had even saved his life. Because of this, they were also told the truth. Surprisingly, none of them seemed to be worried because they held a blind trust in 13. If their master thought that there was a chance of winning, there would certainly be a chance of winning. If he said that there was no possibility to win, the monsters would also think that way. This blind trust was something that they had developed during the time they had spent with him. Even an army of hundreds of sovereigns was no longer enough to faze them. In fact, they were even a bit excited because they would be able to eat high-quality meat, as well as cores that would allow them to upgrade their ranks to the next level. All of them needed vast amounts of resources in order to proceed to the next rank. So, they were very happy because they no longer needed to search far and wide to look for strong monsters to kill. Since the people of Artem were coming to them, they would make sure that none of their enemies would be able to return to their home world. Little did they know that somewhere far away, in a place where they couldn't possibly reach, a young lady whose entire body was covered in blood was already counting the days until the lunar eclipse. Someone had promised to save her, so she held onto those words, helping her endure her pain and suffering. Watching her from the altar were her tormentors, who were making sure that they would be able to siphon every drop of her blood in preparation for the time when she would gain a new vessel, which would allow their king to finally break through to the rank of a celestial. As the days passed by, the wanderers fell into a daily routine. Run in the mornings and chop down trees after breakfast. They would then remove the branches of these trees and sharpen the tip of its main body to serve as some kind of giant projectile that 13 asked of them. After lunch, they would then hunt monsters in order to fill up their quota of cores, so that they would rank up after they completed their first wandering. They were only given 4 hours to hunt for monsters before they returned to the base. After they returned, they would fight with 13 subordinates as a team. These were real battles, and 13 subordinates didn't hold back and attack the wanderers, leaving them seriously injured. Fortunately, the troll shamans had the ability to heal. Also, they would make the wanderers drink healing potions to speed up their recovery. Cain, Herman, Rayon, Lambert, Phoebe, Rio, and Miriam were surprised because these healing potions weren't the watered-down versions that were given to the common folk. They were high-quality potions, which made them wonder how 13 was able to produce them for the hundreds of wanderers who got injured every day. When these group fights ended, they would eat dinner, too tired to do anything else, then they would sleep for the night. Their tired and injured bodies would recover overnight, and when morning came, they would start their routine all over again. This happened day after day, with no end in sight. After a week, those who were scions and retainers of the monarch clans, prestigious families, military, as well as other well-off families who received proper training since they were young, finally understood what was happening. 13 was training all the wanderers, especially those who hadn't been able to receive proper training because they weren't born in good families. For ordinary wanderers, they would be asked to run 10 miles every day. Those who received proper training were asked to run 20 miles. However, 13's sister, Shasha, had been ordered by her brother to run 30 miles every day. The 10-year-old had set a course for everyone, and most of them along the sandy beaches, putting a lot of strain on their bodies. I thought the training I received from my family was already hard, Cain said as he ran beside the leading group. Brother Zion's Spartan training will put the training of the monarch clans to shame. The other leaders of the different wanderers nodded their heads in agreement. Shasha only kept silent because she had been trained by Zion for years. But she had to admit that the training they were having now was on a whole new level. When she was trained by the Levinas family, they used rank 1 and rank 2 avatars to develop her fighting ability. However, her brother was different. Instead of ordinary ranking monsters, the monsters that she had to fight every day were sovereigns. The one she usually fought against was none other than Blackie, the fastest monster among 13's monster army. If she wasn't fighting Blackie, she would be fighting Giga. These battles were one-on-one battles and not group battles. Cain and the other trained wanderers complained that they also wanted to fight sovereigns. But 13 only looked at them in disdain. The trained wanderers would almost always fight 2 versus 1 battles against the alpha trolls, and yet they always lost without even managing to land a proper hit. Cain's partners were sometimes Herman and Rayon, but even with their combined abilities, the trolls they were fighting against were simply too strong, too fast, and too experienced in fighting that they would always get beaten and battered during their battles. 13's training was indeed Spartan, and the wanderers had no choice but to adapt by hook or by crook. At the beginning, only Taiga and Cain joined Shasha in her 30-mile runs every day. But after 2 weeks, the other trained wanderers joined Shasha's training regimen. After 4 weeks, all the wanderers were also doing 30-mile runs, which made Uncle Boo, who was very interested in the wanderers, notice the result of their training. "Will you look at that?" Uncle Boo said as he looked at the wanderers running on the beach. A few weeks ago, some of them would have collapsed at this point, but now their stamina and muscles have developed properly, allowing them to run faster. "What can running do?" Albion snorted. "In the end, can they outrun the people of Artem? It's just wishful thinking. These humans are simply too weak and too fragile to survive their onslaught." "You might be right," Uncle Boo nodded. "But now, I believe that they have what it takes to run and reach their destination. Even if some of them die on the way, the others will definitely reach their goal. Albion scoffed because, in his eyes, all of these fragile creatures were merely cannon fodders. And he was right. All of them were indeed cannon fodders, which was why 13 was determined to train them and give them a fighting chance to return to Pangea. While everyone was busy training, 13 would disappear from the island from time to time. Sometimes he would disappear for days, sometimes he would disappear for a week. When Uncle Boo asked Albion if he knew where 13 went, the unicorn would stay silent. But Uncle Boo could be persistent at times, and during those occasions the unicorn would tell the beholder that he didn't know and didn't give a damn about wherever the 10-year-old was. After being captured by 13, there were many restrictions that were placed on his body, preventing him from divulging anything about what he saw or heard when he was in the treasury of the apocalypse. Albion had only two goals. The first one was to find the candidate who would become the Moon Princess among the Wanderers. The second was to rescue Callie. He would then cross the Gate of the Moonlight to escape the Arcadia archipelago. 13 knew that the unicorn planned to have Callie merge with the body of the Wanderer, allowing her to live for at least a decade longer. But the 10-year-old had asked Metatron to put a restriction on Albion that prevented him from targeting Shasha. In the slim chance that 13's sister was chosen as the candidate to become the Moon Princess, he wasn't allowed to touch her, which would force him to just rescue Callie and follow 13's strategy. Finally, during the 5th week of their training, the boy, who had been away from the Arcadia archipelago for a week, finally returned. There were only a few days until the lunar eclipse, and his return signaled that the preparations that he was working on had been finally completed. "Welcome back, Zion," Shasha said, hugging her brother in front of everyone and patting his head. Taiga and Kane could only watch with envy as the younger boy got pampered by the apple of their eye. After that short sibling bonding, 13 glanced at all the Wanderers who were all looking back at him with determined looks on their faces. Their stamina, strength, fighting prowess, and overall performance had improved by leaps and bounds, making the younger boy nod his head in satisfaction. "Uncle Boo, Albion, call the monster sovereigns and tell them to gather on the second island," 13 ordered. "It's time for us to have one last strategy meeting so that we can give our unwelcome guests a warm and resounding greeting." 13 smirked because he had worked overtime to make sure that everything was ready on his side. Seeing the devilish smile on his face, Tiona, Giga, Taiga, Blackie, Rocky, Hercules, Visego, Poca, 102, T1, and the rest of the trolls grinned back. They had seen their master smile like that many times during the last 3 years that they had been with him. Although the battle up ahead would be an extremely dangerous and difficult one. As long as the 10-year-old was standing on the battlefield, they would stand beside him and destroy all those who would stand in his way. Uncle Boo and Albion stared at Zion for nearly half a minute before transforming into their true forms. Since they were all on these together, they decided to obey the boys' orders and rally the largest monster army that the Arcadia archipelago had ever seen and would probably never be seen again.